Thank you, sir. I appreciate Merge Live's assistance in our creation of these meetings. Welcome to everyone. Just as a reminder, I'm muting as you should. Any place that you have a communication device that's going to ring, interrupt, or drive us all crazy, take a minute to do so. With that, I'll call to order the Tuesday, October 27th, 2020, 7 p.m. quarterly board meeting. All of us on the screen for you YouTube watchers and people who are present, myself, David Scott, the Township Supervisor, our clerk, Melissa Creech, our treasurer, Molly Phillips, our trustees, Rick Sobel, Vanessa Magner, Bob Burkheiser is ill and absent, excused, of course, and Mr. George Weber coming to us from
Brunswick County, North Carolina.
All right, thank you. So we're all in compliance. Everyone else that you see, whether it's our stenographer, Cindy Waker, our attorney, Hans Renthrop, our department heads and leaders in the community, with our DDA, our fire department, our maintenance department, building department, parks and recreation, IT, and human resources and finance are all listed. And you can see from, if you're paying attention, who is on here listening. I can see some candidates for office that are participating to learn and be involved, which is always good to see, and citizens themselves. With that, the Tuesday, October 27, 2020 meeting via electronic video conferencing technology, we will bring the meeting to order and start with, if you would please, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Merge Live. Always a nice touch to have the flag there. It's, you know, we never really know how many people are going to be out there watching on YouTube, things of that nature. Starting the meeting here, we show 22 participants have called in or being part of this. With this meeting, if you have, we'll start with item number 1, which is public comments. Public comments is if you have a comment that you would like to share. It's not a question and answer, and it's not necessarily something that we would like you to start talking about something on the agenda. But if there's something you want to share with us, you want to bring to our attention that a department head or board member may seize and follow up on, now would be a time for you to make a statement. If it's a statement regarding a public hearing or something else, please hold your comments until the time of the public hearing. In order to raise your hand and alert Mr. Rob Whitus, assisting us with Merge Live, you press *9. That raises your hand and alerts us that there's someone that wants to share information. Once you are acknowledged, you'll press *6 to unmute yourself and identify yourself, name and address, and take a brief moment to share a fact or circumstance. Again, if this is a comment about something on the agenda, public hearing, there'll be different times where we'll touch those bases. If you have something that's not on the agenda you would like to share, now would be the time to raise your hand by doing *9.
If anybody would like to address the board, press *9 to raise your hand. We'll give it a moment here. No one has raised their hand yet. We'll give it a moment.
No problem.
Okay, caller with the last 4 digits, 4240. Press *6 to unmute yourself and you can begin speaking.
Hello, this is Pam Jackson, 5736 Lancaster Lane in Commerce Township, and looking forward to hearing all the results of tonight's agenda items, which really look good. And I'd like to mention, Jay James, I hope your hands are on the mend. So everybody have a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Are there any other callers for public comments?
We'll give it a moment here. No one has raised their hand at this point. No one else has raised their hand.
Thank you. We'll close public comments. I appreciate your assistance, Rob. Moving on to item number 2 is a public hearing for the first amended restated Lower Straits Lake Aquatic Weed Control SAD. I will preface this for the, I'm sure the board in total. We would like to thank you for all of your comments, all of your praise, all of the emails that you have sent us. The clerk's office has captured all of those. They'll be stored as part of the formal document regarding this. As we move into the public hearing, for expedience sake, if there's someone who is opposed to the public hearing, those are the people we would like to hear from. I will paraphrase, if you will, use an analogy. We don't want to spend a lot of time on a meeting this evening saying, thank you for doing this. We really appreciate you doing it, and sound like Chip and Dale where it's thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, when what we're looking for is guidance if there are people who are opposed to the process, that are opposed to reverting back to the small lot, medium lot, large lot, fixed rates. With that, opening the public hearing, if there is anyone here that would like to share with us an opposition, a point of opposition regarding the public hearing SAD, please press *9 and alert us by raising your hand so we can hear from those people who oppose the system.
We'll give it a moment here. No one has raised their hand yet, but we'll just give it a moment. Press *9. Call in user 1 has raised their hand. If you press *6, you can unmute yourself. Call in user 1. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Greg Weber, 3372 Edgewood Park Drive, Commerce Township, Michigan. I would like to thank the board for the hard work they put into this and really appreciate the work. The one thing that I would like to say is that I believe it's really essential that we keep the Lower Straits Lake Preservation Committee intact and have them as an active part of this work going forward, because they do a significant amount of work surveying the lake for species that shouldn't be in the lake and that type of thing. So we really do need to have their work continuing on as we go forward, not just cut them out of the process going forward. And thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Weber. Any other caller who is in opposition? Obviously, the Township Board has heard those people who are affirmative and in support of the SAD. The SAD is an SAD that supports Lower Straits Lake. Commerce Township does not own a lot or access point on the lake. It is your lake. We are just simply a collection point and a way to get bids and get people involved. The lake dwellers will be involved in this process. There is no intent whatsoever to supplant or replace them. It's your lake, your problem. We will help you by doing the collections to pay for services that you as the lake dwellers want. Unlike Mr. Weber, who wanted to share the praise, is there anyone out there who opposes this system? We would really like to know if that person does exist. If you are here on this public hearing, could you please raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone, tablet, keypad? And we'll wait.
No one has their hand raised at this point. We'll give it a moment.
Okay.
Press *9 to raise your hand. No one has raised their hand at this point.
Thank you, sir. I will go out there, and I hate to do this because I really don't want to prolong this meeting. We have a lot of important things to do, including the SAD. But at this time, if there is someone who has a specific comment they would like to share with the Board of Trustees regarding the SAD in this public hearing, this is the time where you can press *9. As you've heard me say in meetings in the past, if it's been said once, we heard you. We know what the feelings are of the board. We know what the feeling is. When I say the board, the Lake Preservation Committee. We know the Township Board is here to support you. So I want to avoid the Chip and Dale scenario where 25 people come on and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. But if there is someone that has a point that has not been discussed, that has not been emailed, and has not been captured, now would be a great time for you to press *9 to raise your hand and share that fact or comment.
Okay, no one has their hand raised yet. We'll give it a moment. Press *9 if you'd like to address the board. No one has raised their hand.
I appreciate it, Mr. Whitus. I appreciate all of the listeners out there. I know that there are people, as I said, we as the Township Board of Trustees have received your emails of support. We have received your comments and directions. We have received your desire to maintain and keep the lake managed. With that, I'll close the public hearing and turn to Mr. Sobel to entertain a motion.
And make a motion to resolution reviving the special assessment role, the special assessment district designated first amended and restated Lower Straits Lake Weed Control Special Assessment District.
Support.
Motion by Sobel, supported by Magner. Any other questions, concerns, or discussion by the Board of Trustees? Perfect. A roll call vote, please, Clerk Creech.
Sobel.
Aye.
Magner. Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Burkheiser is absent. Scott.
Aye. Thank you all for your assistance. Thank you all for your participation. And we look forward to moving this process forward to assist Lower Straits Lake. Moving on to item number 3, a resolution revising.
Oh.
I apologize. Where did I go? I'm working off the notes here. Item number 4, resolution authorizing proceedings to acquire easement interests in the Benstein Water Main Project. Mr. Renthrop has brought this before the Board of Trustees as he has been working on our behalf to move this project forward. We do actually have to give him permissions to proceed. I would entertain a motion after Mr. Renthrop if you have any information to share with us.
Just real briefly, as stated in my letter, we have approvals for the appraisals. We had approval for the title work, which, by the way, we were able to come in significantly under the maximum amount. And now we are just ready to make the offers themselves. I didn't find anything in the prior resolutions authorizing us to make those offers. So it is our recommendation that you approve the resolution is attached, and we'll move forward and start making the offers.
Hans, I just have one quick question. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a typo, but is there one property that has $10 here?
Yes,
okay.
I don't anticipate actually that property will be, it's a goofy property. I don't anticipate that action offer will be made. There is some title goofiness with it. Everything indicates it's actually owned by Oakland County as a public road. But the appraiser came back with that, and I thought for $10 it wasn't worth arguing over.
Sure. I just want to make sure it wasn't a typo.
Nope, it was not.
With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize Mr. Renthrop to proceed.
So I'll make a resolution authorizing the township attorney to make good faith offers for the Benstein Road Water Main Project.
Support.
Motion by Weber, supported by Sobel. Any other questions or concerns? Discussion by the board. Okay, a roll call vote, please.
Weber,
Aye.
Sobel,
Aye.
Magner,
Aye.
Burkheiser absent. Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Scott.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 5 is an intent resolution to tentatively establish a special assessment district to be known as Special Projects Number 46. Also brought to us by Attorney Hans Renthrop.
Just real briefly, Molly was hoping to close this SAD out before the end of the year for accounting purposes, my understanding, or audit purposes. In order to do that, we have to have the intention resolution at this hearing. It has been open about the maximum amount of time, as well as we have quite a few properties in it, so it seems appropriate to move forward with it.
I'll make a motion that we tentatively approve declaring it's our intention to establish the special assessment district known as Special Projects Number 46.
Support.
Motion by Sobel, supported by Creech. Questions, concerns, or discussion by the board? A roll call vote, please.
Sobel,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Burkheiser absent. Magner,
Aye.
Sobel, or Scott.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, authorization for appraisal. This also brought to us by Attorney Hans Renthrop. This is regarding the Regal Entertainment Group parcel number 17-36-400-027.
Yes, as stated in my letter to the board, Regal Entertainment has appealed for the 2020 tax year. The valuation date for that property is December 31st, 2019. Of course, we know at that time the property was an ongoing viable movie theater. Since that time, in the events of COVID, we've seen significant changes to the theater, as well as Regal Entertainment's, my understanding, suspended all operations for much of this year. So while we do anticipate a significant decrease in 2021 tax year, the 2020 year is not adversely affected. However, petitioner's been very zealous. I've worked with him in the past in moving these programs forward. It would be my recommendation to authorize the engagement of John Widmer, who is an appraiser who's done a lot of these. I recommend him in the event that he's done several theaters, with the idea that we hope to settle or resolve it prior to either quickly or not getting too far down the road with the appraisal, so that we can reduce the costs associated with it. It is a little bit of a tricky situation because we don't know what the future holds. If we have a significant reduction at this point in time, that of course caps the taxable rate and potentially puts us at a very low taxable value for the property. Conversely, if Regal Entertainment was to go out of business or sell the property, then that would uncap it anyway, in which case this would all be for naught. So it's an unusual situation we find ourselves in, and that is my recommendation. Happy to have any questions.
So so you're recommending Widmer versus Craig Fuller, and you had noted that the Fuller appraisal agency had done the appraisal on this specific property before. What are the pros and cons of switching appraisers?
The pros are this. One, John has broken his numbers down into 2 sets. So a preliminary cost and a secondary cost as opposed to one total cost. Although I typically have had worked well with Craig, he did our appraisals for the easements. But John is also more experienced in the field of theaters. He's, according to Oakland County, he's done several theaters in Southeast Michigan and probably has a better expertise in involving them.
So since they were shut down for most of 20, why can't they appeal to the MTT for 20?
They will appeal. So it's a goofy situation the way tax appeals work. The valuation date of December 31st, 2019 is your 2020 tax year, and the December 31st, 2020 is 2021 tax year. So they will no doubt be receiving a large reduction in 2021 for that tax year. This one, in my opinion, is premature. It's not a clear-cut decision either way, but that's my best recommendation.
So if it does get reduced to the 900,000, does that mean it'll be subject to Headley and can only increase it 5% a year thereafter?
Correct. And when we reached out to try to get a sense of settlement, we received an offer below what the petition number was. Down, I think, the 760. So it's actually going to be the refund on, so you know, for the refund on $900,000 for the township alone is $4,600. And the refund, so it, $750,000, you're probably looking at $550,200 in refund, which of course gets you first stages of John's appraisal.
Does this have an impact on the SADs?
No, would not. Well, no, it would not have an impact in the SEDs because the SEDs would continue. Because they're
Do
not
we
taxed.
know, do we have any information on any of the other municipalities' appraisals of movie theaters recently?
We don't have anything because we don't have anything recent. Or at least the anyone's going to give us.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you say that if they don't reopen, that this is all for none if they decide to close down?
Well, we don't know. It's certainly possible that that's the case. If Regal Entertainment was to say close permanently, go into bankruptcy, sell its theaters, sell its property, sell just this property. Once the property is sold, of course, that uncaps it anyway. So whatever the sale price will be a strong indicating value of what the actual value of the property is. And of course, we just don't know what's in Regal's future. I'm not sure that it knows what's in its future. So we're kind of hedging our bets to know where to go from here.
Are they open right now?
My understanding is no.
No.
And they are closed indefinitely at this point in time.
I don't know. I just wouldn't want to spend this money if they're just not going to open.
That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of a tough decision because as you point out, there's a good possibility it will not reopen or that it gets sold or something like that, and that changes everything. It's also a strong possibility that we, of course, we actually know that we come to 2021, we will see a significant reduction. My recommendation for the appraisal is to put us in the best bargaining position to see where we can take it from here, and at least have that in our thing. The petitioner is very zealous, and I know he's going to push us. I don't think we have very much information or sufficient information to justify a good defense at this point in time, although we're playing a little bit of poker here and we don't know what the other side's hand's holding. So
right.
I prefer to have an ace in the pocket and be able to leverage that to our advantage.
Hans, isn't it safe to say that this is a COVID-related incident? Shy of the COVID, we would not be having this discussion. And with all of the federal funding, CARES Act funding, state and local otherwise, there's a high probability that this entertainment source could seek relief or could be funded from one of those avenues. So it may be of value to us to have this information in advance.
That's all entirely possible. We are seeing a lot of appraisals this year. This is the first year we've really seen an uptake since the Great Recession. But we are seeing quite a few appraisals, or appeals. Probably have 7 or so right now, but this is the only one that's in this unique situation where we're looking at a business that's been shuttered for quite some time. Again, my opinion is this is clearly premature and wrongful brought, in my opinion, but that's neither here nor there. The question is, what do we do about it? So,
when do we have to decide by?
Well, we always like to give the appraisers at least a couple of months time to start working on the appraisals. It usually takes at least a month to 2 months to do it. We are looking at a due date for the appraisal mid-late January. So I thought if we could get it, moving and at least have the ability to go forward with it, that would be advantageous.
So where would the money come from on this?
General fund.
Correct.
All right, so you're looking for a motion then?
Yes. Correct.
So you want the motion to authorize?
Authorize item number 6, authorize for appraisal, Regal Entertainment Group parcel.
So authorizing the retaining services of John R. Windmer of Fromer and Windmer Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $10,000?
That's fine.
From the money to come from the general fund.
Support.
Oh, Mr. Weber, you got me. Okay. Motion by Sobel, supported by Weber. Any other discussion, questions, or concern by the Board of Trustees?
One final question, Hans.
Yes.
What do we expect to see? So help me understand a little more about phase 1 and phase 2. So what will we see at phase 1, which is not to exceed $5,000 according to Mr. Widmer.
Traditionally, when we look at an appraisal in phase one, when John's done these past, he gives us a pretty decent rundown of what his assessment it will be. He'll look at he'll look at other the appraisals he's done in the past, investigate the site, review the documents. In this case, this particular property is most likely to be around the income approach evaluation, and he'll do an analysis of the income approach and give us his numbers. It will not be a full up write up. That would be phase two, where you see usually those appraisals run around 80 pages or so, looking at both the cost approach, income approach, and sales comparison approach. And then he'll do all the analysis on that as well. So usually we have a pretty good idea of whether it's worth where the numbers are by phase one.
Well, that's kind of my point. Do we, and I don't want to get caught up on pennies here, but it seems like there's basically, since phase one is going to be at least 2 to 3 months from today's date, correct?
No, phase one will be probably about a month or so today.
Okay, so the total project will be 2 months then, phase
Correct.
1 month. So I guess maybe leave it into your hands if there's something that's strange coming out of phase one before we move into phase two, just have our interests at heart, I guess I would say, without having to change the motion.
Absolutely. And, we've always tried to keep it, we cut our costs where we can. But the problem is if we cut our costs too much, then the other side says, okay, well, I'll just push you and push you and push it. So we want to have the ability to go all the way so that we're not, edging against ourselves. But yeah, absolutely. We're constantly engaging, trying to look for to reduce the cost down.
Understand.
Hans, have we ever asked the county or the Walled Lake School District to contribute towards some of this, since they're impacted financially more than we are?
This question comes up, I think, every time we look at an engagement for it. And I'm trying to remember the answer we give. We have, in some cases, done it, but because the township is the taxing authority and is the one that's defending it, we're usually mostly on our own. And we also have the most to lose typically.
All right. With that, motion by Sobel, supported by Weber, not to exceed $10,000 with the Widmer form. A roll call vote, please.
Sobel,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Magna,
No.
Burkheiser absent, Phillips,
Aye.
Creech, aye, Scott,
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to jump off unless there's something else that you would like me to maintain on the agenda, but it looks like it's mostly discussion items.
I think you're fine, Hans, and we're always happy to cut the bill and get you off there.
I didn't think you want me sitting around just listening, but if you want to pay me to do it, I'll do it.
Thank you and enjoy your evening.
All right. Thank you all. Good night.
All right.
Bye, Hans.
Moving on to item number 7, and I'm going to throw number 8 into this. I thought it was applicable, so I figured it was a worthy thing to combine. Township-owned property strategy has been something that we have discussed over the last few years, I'm sure maybe even decades before. I guess historically, I'll share when I came into office in 2016, we tried to determine what did we own? What are we insuring? How did it all pan out? As you and many others have heard, we did a study of the assessing records for the County of Oakland. And, as Molly or other members who see these things regularly, you can tell in the 60s, things were entered as owned by Commerce Township. In the 70s, they were changed to, Township of. And then things started showing up in the rolls as Charter Township and Commerce Charter Township. And so even on county records, it's listed in kind of a sporadic, inconsistent, but similar method. The end of the day, we came up as being parcel and property owners of 145 parcels. Many of those parcels are easily identified. Our 4 fire stations, our township hall, our old township hall, the library, all across the board. But many of these parcels are pump stations. They're sewer line access points. a variety of other things, but more often than not, the treasurer's office sees a list annually where parcels are abandoned. They go to a tax auction. Then no one wants them in the tax auction. The county doesn't want them. And it's like a boomerang. It comes back and lands on Treasurer Phillips' desk. It says, which ones do you want and which ones you don't? And even at the end of the day, even regardless if we want them or we don't want them, the reality is if we don't want them, they come back to us as Commerce Township. And in some cases, it's harmless. Some cases, it's a project which I've mentioned in the past, a wetland conservation waiting to be created. In other places, they become lots that are a nuisance for us to maintain. They're for a nuisance for dumping and things of that nature. And because they're ours, we're responsible for them. So I threw in this parcel, which would be identified if you looked it up on BSNA or Property Gateway as 485 West Beachdale. This is a piece of property that was a home at one time. The home, whether it burned or collapsed, demolished, became a vacant lot. And in some way, sometime, someone convinced Commerce Township to buy this lot. In some neighborhoods, I would purport that we have a need to have a space, to have a park, but it just so happens that this, the West Carroll Lake Heights subdivision, has a riverfront beach, private property maintenance area, volleyball courts, basketball court, the whole shot. This is a neighborhood that has no need for an additional lot. It's not adjacent to one of our many parks. It's bigger parcels like Maple Glen, Bicentennial, or Hickory Glen. So this is one of those places where I would say there's value in us putting this up for sale. It's a buildable lot. Someone could put a home in this neighborhood, and there's already a park in this neighborhood. So it's not like we're providing a parcel for people to use in a neighborhood where there is no park. But our strategy, and I've talked to this with Mr. Weber, Mr. Burkheiser, Mr. James, and other people throughout the township, we really just need to make a decision of these 145 parcels. Which ones do we want to maintain? I believe there's a great deal of merit in the township board over time determining which wetlands can we create a wetland conservancy for the public's benefit. When someone wants to build a store or a home, if they want to square off a lot or fill in some wetland, the Department of Natural Resources, Eagle, federal agencies require them to replace the wetland in the state of Michigan that they fill in a lot. That is easily transferred into a wetland conservancy. So if you want to fill in property to build a commercial development, you've got to replace wetland that won't be built on and recreate that natural space. Much of our wetland we've acquired as abandoned property. We have acres and acres of it for the map purposes around Carroll Lake. We can, if you will, sell that property as a wetland conservancy. It will never be sold. It will always be maintained. And the going price, as I'm told, if developer number 7 wants to build a grocery store, has to fill in 2/10 of an acre of wetland, they have to, according to the DNR and Eagle, someone on a higher authority, create 1 acre of wetland somewhere else in the area. That costs roughly $80,000 an acre or more to do it. So by utilizing our existing abandoned property, which is wetland, we, Commerce Township, can create a wetland conservancy. We can monetize it. We as a township can accept payment for the conservancy. We just have to prove and indemnify it'll never be sold, it'll never be built, and it'll be maintained. Somebody dumps tires, we got to go clean them up. Things of that nature. So I think that's the first thing when it comes to a strategy of our properties is if you will, a committee of maybe it's the entire board, one day doing a work study session going through this parcel by parcel. What would be the purpose of keeping this site? And what would be the benefit of removing it from our books and putting it back onto the tax rolls as a developed home or an addition to an adjacent property, things of that nature. We've already done this a couple times in the last couple of years where we've picked up small parcels. Mr. James and Ms. Phillips identified a spot on Venona Street. It was 12 feet or 20 feet. They already were occupying the space. They had it fenced. We formalized it, sold it for a nominal fee. But with that strategy in the discussion, we also have to discuss the topic of encroachments. We have substantial parcels, and I would invite you all to go to the dead end of Harpham Street or the dead end of Venona Street, and you can see where the people have encroached into Wise Acres 30 feet. They have, I did share recently a couple of photographs of yards where people have mowed 20, 30 feet beyond their property line into our township park, put up decorative fencing, put up fire pits, put up things of that nature. And at some point in time, the township board is going to have to take a stance to either physically remove them, push them back, in some cases, take down ornate retaining walls, cemented driveways and aprons that have encroached and expanded onto township property, and set a defined barrier. There are other parcels of our, the Wise Road frontage of Wise Woods or Victory Park. We probably don't need to put up a fence to define that that's our property. But some of our residential abutments, we definitely need to take a stand on the encroachment issue. And I think many of these are evolving into things where we just can't say, I'll use the example, 3400 Union Lake Road, the parcel we own there, where the property owner is their fence is 6 feet over into our property line. We've notified them in writing. We've put them on notice that at some point in time, they're going to have to remove their fence. So we've defeated any adverse possession and put them on notice. But with the strategy of our properties, we've given great deal of thought into some of them. One, our horse farm property, 2552 Wixom Road. We're taking steps to manage and monitor that. But our overall property, I'm open to the board's, decisions, whether I participate as a citizen or if it's done earlier than that, before the 20th of November. I have a 3-ring binder. I think it's worthy to go through the pages and make a comment. Keep it, sell it, or protect it. And I think those are the 3 categories we have to stick to. But I'm open to discussion.
So, Dave, I have a couple of thoughts, and I think your general direction is appropriate. I don't think the subcommittee should be the entire board, because if that's the case, then the ability of a subcommittee to move more quickly is going to be at risk because of whether it's open meetings and or schedules of 7 people. I think Mr. James and Mr. Campbell and Treasurer Phillips would be a minimum key members of the subcommittee. But I think it's more than just it could be more than just the 3 tactics that you spoke of. I think we need to look at all 140 pieces of property, and we need to categorize them appropriately. And I don't know whether that is 3 or whether that's 5, but it also needs to be consistent with our master plan and what we're doing. And just as important, and I thought you brought up a lot of great ideas and a lot of great concepts that would be pieces of this strategy, but it's making conscious decisions with each parcel and on exactly what we want to do, rather than just letting them evolve into whatever they are. We need to categorize them, and we need to make a conscious decision on what we want to do with that piece of property long term. And with I'm assuming the vast majority of these properties are going to be kept as green space and or wetlands, et cetera, within the township. That's kind of my, I don't want to pigeonhole us into just one of three pieces of action per property, because I think it might evolve into something more than that.
No, I don't disagree.
And I would be happy to volunteer to be part of that subcommittee as well.
I'm happy to do it. I do point out the 45 or 485 West Beachdale as, you know, we're mowing this every week throughout the year. For some reason, previously, the staff has been told when you go out and mow that, also go down the street and mow the island in the middle of the subdivision. It's not ours. It's not something we need to be wasting time on. But I also think it would be valuable for the subcommittee and the board to understand what some of these parcels are. Several of our subdivisions, I'll use Gulf Manor, and then when you get over to the North Mount Royal Beach Association, there are 2 community wells that existed back in the day. Those wells have been abandoned. City water has been adapted. But in Gulf Manor, there's approximately 5 acres adjacent to Clifford Smart Middle School that we mow. That subdivision already has a playground and park. There's no need for us to mow this property or maintain this property. And we can make a decision. Subcommittee can look at it and say, is this something that you want to trade to the Walled Lake Schools? Exchange property. And I think you're right, George, because there are topics that don't come up in conversation that are viable at some point in the future. When we as a community, as we grow, will need property. So some of it is worth keeping. But the 485 West Beachdale, there's no purpose to having this lot. We do have to go back and do a little bit of data mining to see how much did we pay for the lot, how did we pay for the lot. And I think this was a green space acquisition, which is a shame. And then, move forward to listing it with a local realtor, it doesn't matter who it is, with an understanding that that person who's selling a parcel for the Charter Township of Commerce, they're not going to get 6%. We'll pay them for the services, but there's got to be a reduced rate that they'll do to dispose of this lot and create a buildable taxable entity.
So Dave, I don't know if there's urgency for this particular lot, but there's probably a significant number of lots in a similar situation where they're in a residential area. We really have no business owning it. And I guess unless there's some urgency for this one, I would say we can capture those lots that are within residential areas that we don't think we should be owning, and then work with a realtor on a package saying, here, we've identified these parcels that we would like to move. Let's talk about how we do that as under one contract.
Yep. As far as I guess the other portion of this conversation comes in on annually, as Treasurer Phillips is given a list from the county of saying, these are the parcels that are about to land on your lap that you're going to be responsible for, is creating some type of a tactic of how do we dispose of them, how do we categorize them, how do we identify them as they arrive so we know to be proactive and not reactive. The other thing I will share, as you all educate yourselves on wetland conservancy, I can tell you that I've educated the county road commission to the point they're going to create their own conservancy, and they would be willing to partner with Commerce Township. If we didn't want to do it ourselves, we could pledge our properties to them. They would manage, maintain. There is a cost to running conservancy. They're not free. That sort of thing. And I also would say, just one last topic, the other portion that we need to put into a strategy of how do we handle these property. Right now, we have, I believe, 2 properties or property owners that would like to donate, bequeath, or give land to Commerce Township, to one to create a park in the northwest and one to guarantee that her family property is never built on in the north central section of the township. I believe those are going to be coming to us sooner than later, and we need to be able to talk about how are we going to accept, whether it's a donation, as we've discussed, from the library, to a donation of property to the township in total. You know, what do we want, and what's an assessment of that property when it comes? So I guess I would note that I'll take your position to volunteer, Jay, Dave, and Molly, to help you on this project and make that the if you will, the startup subcommittee. And then I'll have one of the staff members create a 3-ring binder. They're not that big. We can throw them on the copy machine, crank it out, and give each of you a 3-ring binder to go through and analyze and say, I think we can do this faster than we thought we could, and report back to the board at your convenience. If that's, is there anybody else that wants to be involved or would want to do something like this at all, or as an alternate, if you will?
So Dave, can I just,
Yep.
Because we have them listed as agenda items, I would think, based upon maybe some previous discussions, that maybe agenda item number 10 maybe be folded into that subcommittee, Union Lake Road.
Perfect.
And I think that the 8585 PGA would be completely separate, because I think that's its own subcommittee, not only for that building, but also I think including the fire station number 4. So if the sheriff's office does exit that's kind of one package project on what do we do to revamp Station 4 for the fire department, at the same time 8585 PGA.
As well as the buildings on Fisher.
Yeah.
Yep.
No,
Great.
well stated. So what I'll do is I'll, if you will, create the subcommittee with Molly, George, Jay, and Dave, and create the 3-ring binders for you all to have a copy to flip through. Putting item number 10 in that category, and I guess using the same strategy, the 8585 PGA Drive, and station number 4, the substation that would be vacated when the sheriff's department is created. I would suggest that you have, we have some unique opportunities. Obviously, the architectural firm that we have hired to serve our needs for Station 3 at 2150 Welch Road, they are a public safety developer. They have Scott Barnes is an architect who has done multiple police stations. So he understands the idiosyncrasies of, if you have a building where it's restricted access and restricted exit, there are different rules and regulations that go with that. But also it's kind of the domino flow. As we do 2150 Welch Road, that will make room for us to have mobilization of people, manpower, and resources here to remodel 8585 PGA Drive. And it comes to a strategy of, how do you want to do it? I mean, it could certainly be an SAD, police SAD that helped us do that. It could be a general fund expenditure that helps you do that. It could be the building fund. We here in the Township Hall, and not to torture Clerk Creech, but I would invite all of you, if you have some free time this week, during business hours, come into this building and take a peek at all of the people who are in the hallways, where hallways are becoming workspace because Clerk Creech and the staff are so overwhelmed with everything they have doing, to show some of the deficiencies that this building possesses. So just as an example, let's say we were going to move the building department over to 8585 PGA Drive. We could use the building fund to remodel that building to accommodate the building department. That could become their new home. The assessing area is space that the clerk's office could easily take over, not to tell stories out of school, but the clerk is one of those people that has statutory requirements to protect things. We have ballots locked up in the building, in the basement and things like that. But voting booths and things of that nature that are immensely important, we kind of have them piecemeal scattered and stored under lock and key around the township. As we digitize our blueprints and vacate the basement, it gives us space to store more of the clerk's belongings here on site and under her watchful eye. And by moving the building department across the parking lot, it expands the campus. It will give us funding and opportunity to take a building that is in many ways very usable as it is. All of you are well aware, and I hope that many of you take some trips with Lieutenant Reyes to a few other substations to see how Commerce, as we exist today, is not the worst in the complement of stations that the Sheriff's Department is utilizing. Back in the day, Oxford used a rental building in a storage facility. So there are places that have older buildings, there are places that have newer buildings, but you'll get a quick feel of what we need to provide our citizens when it comes to a safe place to come and speak to the police and share their secrets, whether it's a senior citizens who've been taken advantage of and their life savings been lost, whether it's a homeowner that has fallen prey to a title fraud, or if it's one of our sons or daughters who's been a victim of a crime that needs a safe place to have a discussion. I think we can justify that there is a way to create this quickly, equitably, and using resources available to us, which will then also, utilizing Station 4, essentially the offices as they exist, and not to make the chief settle for less, but many of those offices, you take the lieutenant's office and that can be the fire marshal's office. You take the Sergeant Wooster's office and that can be an EMS coordinator's office. You take the patrolman investigators, the detective, 3 officers are using a room that's probably 14 by 20. That can be, a paid on call training and retention officer's office. So relabeling and expanding and doing a few things, we can very cost effectively create office space and room at the at Station 4 on Glengarry, which, just as a reminder to Clerk Creech, one of our trucks is off for service, so you have 2 bays available as an election voting booth, or 1 bay is available, so we don't have to park any trucks outside to accommodate voters on November 3rd. But yeah, a subcommittee for the substation using our subject matter experts that we have available to us in Scott Barnes and Kevin Donnelly, I think would be of great value to explore. We may decide as a board of trustees, we want to go out for bids and make sure we're getting the right price. But I believe you have some very unique opportunities available to you as the board of trustees to, as we vacate Station 4, move into 8585 PGA Drive, or I'll remind Mr. Stovall that maybe it will be 2020 Township Drive or 2019 Township Drive as we acquired it. And then that when we're able to move into Station 3 as a new fire station, then we can quickly do some additional remodeling over at Station 4 and make the space that we need to do these things. Things that the Sheriff's Department has some very unique requirements that the average citizen may not be aware of. If a deputy goes out and confiscates fireworks just can't go into a property room. They have to go off-site to a secure bunker. and things of that nature. We have a one-car garage for storage and things of that nature at Station 4, so we don't necessarily have to vacate those things. You might have to upgrade it to alarm it or do something more, but that doesn't necessarily have to go into this facility. Many of those items end up in Pontiac or in Orion Township at the old Brown Road Animal Control Site, and Sheriff's Department properties, which was the trustee camp, animal control, and the outdoor bunker storage for explosives. But you know, there are some idiosyncrasies, so I would hope that you seize the opportunity to meet with and explore what Mr. Barnes can bring to the table, what Plant Moran Cressa through Kevin and Paul can bring to the table to assist us. Because I think you're going to find that a lot of the 85-85 can happen sooner than later. I will say a conversation that we have to have is we have 3 tenants remaining in 85-85 PGA Drive. 2 of them have very solid leases. As long as we have them in as a tenant, we can't move them, we can't use them. And unfortunately, we continue to pay property taxes on that. It doesn't become an exempt property as owned by Oakland or as owned by Commerce Township. So I would suggest that the Board of Trustees authorize, whether it's the supervisor or a subcommittee, to approach the tenants and buy them out. If we can buy them out, we can get them off to a new site. We can get them relocated and moved in. We can save $27,000 a year in property taxes, and have a pallet waiting to be dealt with. But we really need to take a step towards, if they stay here as their lease would allow through 2023, it's going to delay a lot of things from happening where, and I'll throw a number that's low. If you were to go to Midwest Recycling or Pacific Arms and say, could I give you $20,000 each to vacate your leases early? I think you're going to find that they would eagerly say yes after a bit of negotiation. They'll relocate, and then we'll have a building that we can, 1, zero out in taxes, and 2, begin to develop for the needs of our township. I would say the Sheriff's Department, they're going to need 10,000 square feet. But that leaves a lot of room for a building department. It leaves a lot of room for additional storage. And then there is a future, as we have discussed briefly, of maybe putting a paramedic unit on site here just north of our downtown development authority, expanding the services of the fire department closer to our downtown as we begin to develop and grow. A paramedic unit that would augment Fire Station 3, our busiest station in the big box M5 corridor, Haggerty Road corridor, is worth a discussion, and I'm sure the chief is up for that at some point in time. But a subcommittee to negotiate and vacate 85-85 should be a priority.
Dave, I agree with you, and I think the subcommittee needs to take on all of everything you described to really figure out, 1, what does the township truly need? Again, we have some space doesn't mean we need it for 12 months out of the year. You know, if we have peaks and valleys, it's nice to be able to have some flexibility for some overflow, whether it's elections or what. But so rather than kind of solving it here, I think you're correct in a subcommittee should be put together for those properties. And as Rick said, probably include Fisher Drive into that as well, saying these are existing structures we have. How do we best maximize the use of them? And do we need all of them? Meaning Fisher Road, or should it be something else? But that's what I think the subcommittee should spend its time on.
So I'd like to nominate myself to be on the substation committee.
I would like to be able to at least start a conversation. I've already had conversations with the tenants that are in there today. Keep in mind, we have 3 tenants. So Pacific Arms, Midwest Recycling, and then the Doug Brown Agency. Doug Brown's lease expired in April. He was having trouble finding a relocation site. I allowed him to stay on. When the federal government changed tax day from April into July, the CPAs and other tenants were in the building. I allowed Doug to just kind of linger along with them. I have served Doug with written notice. He's got to go. His lease is up. We need his space. And he is working to do that. So I do not think that there's any need to address Mr. Brown in the conversation. But I would like to help Mr. Sobel until I'm not needed any longer, whether it's as a civilian or as the supervisor currently, to help come up with some numbers to guide you on what it's going to take to get them gone. I have a good idea. I've had conversations with the companies both. It's just a matter of taking some steps. But I'm sure Mr. Sobel, Lieutenant Reyes, I don't know if the Sheriff's Department has anybody that specifically looks at this topic, if you will, on what their wants and needs are when it comes to a substation, if they have a say. So I guess we'll yield to Lieutenant Reyes's input when it comes to that subject. But to start the process, and if there's somebody else that wants to jump on, of course, join.
Well, Dave, I would suggest that you don't ignore our purchasing policy and just go with PERSA. If has a tendency to be over $10,000, which it will, has to be sealed bids. And it doesn't mean you have to take the lowest one, but it has to go out for bid. And you can take Cressa because you have a good working relationship or they have better expertise or whatever, even if they're not low, but you can't just give it to them.
I think we should start with just board members, and we'll bring in the experts after. So I don't know if the fire chief also wants to be involved with this,
okay,
or not. And then I don't know if George or Vanessa is interested. George, if you want, I don't know if you want to, if you're going to be involved in the other one, to be able to be involved with both, or if that's too much for you.
Well, I might have more time than some of you others, so I'll volunteer, and then maybe we can at a later point in time, if Bob wants to be part, I'll relinquish it, but I'll at least sign up initially.
Thank you. I guess I would volunteer Mr. James to assist you, Mr. Sobel, on a couple topics when it comes to the building department and the resources available. It would be worthy for him to at least have a conversation with you when it comes to that.
Depends if he's going to charge me or not.
Just a little.
Perfect.
Dave, really quick, if we could go back quickly on the encroachments, is the subcommittee going to talk about that? And are they all identified?
I think it would be a worthy topic for the subcommittee to take under their wing. Not all of them have been identified. I apologize. Most of them have been identified by the township. Not all of them have been approached and notified that their encroachment is not acceptable. I think that's something that we need to look at as a group. Some of this may have to, from my conversations with Mr. Atkinson, may have to be done in a closed session.
Right.
But yes, I do believe all of them have been identified. All of them have been.
Okay. I just know time is of the essence when it comes to that. There's certain time things there. So maybe sooner than later, we need to start talking.
I think it will be a priority of the subcommittee to take steps towards. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay.
I just know as we come across them in the building department, certain properties, and we can see they're encroaching in the township property, we have kind of a form letter we send off to them, just informing them that, it appears they've encroached. At this time, we're not asking them to do anything. We just want them to be aware of it. And That we're, at least that way we're putting them on notice. But we haven't gone around each township owned property to identify any encroachment.
Okay. About how many are there? Just wild guess. Is there 5 or 50?
It's closer to 50 than 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of them, Vanessa, are, I think some of them are very innocent.
Oh, sure.
They've mowed a little more. They put a vegetable garden out, and they, you know, it's half and half. Some their boat gets pushed a little further back, so it's never near the swing set, and you know they're using it for storage. We have one for sure where the people just use the shortcut through the township to put the well to their house on our property. A little more egregious.
Okay.
So it's, yeah, but it is closer to 50 properties. And one of the things that I think the subcommittee, and I'll make a little list to try to give some guidance. One of the things I think the subcommittee really needs to look at when it comes to property management and strategy is, and I'll use our neighbors, West Bloomfield. I think they've mastered this and they do a good job. When you pull up to a park in West Bloomfield, it'll tell you you're at Bloomer Park and it gives you the address and everything right on the billboard. So if you are a friend, you're a visitor, and God forbid there's an emergency, you dial 911, where are you? Well, I'm at Bloomer Park and it's XXX address, Richardson Road. None of our parks have that differentiation. Many of our park properties or our green space properties, I think over the last 4 years, we've put up close to 1,000 signs on Wise Acres and Victory Park, Benstein and Sleeth Road, and north of Wixom and Glengarry, property that we own, notifying people there is no hunting, there is no trespassing. It's dawn to dusk. Leash law applies, and if there's any hazard or problem, to contact the township hall at the supervisor's phone number. Those signs get vandalized every time we put them up. Last year, we put up signs. We did a GPS coordinate of every hunting blind and tree stand that we could find on the property. We turned it over to the Department of Natural Resources for enforcement, and they went out and started ticketing people who were hunting on our property where it's not allowed. And then our maintenance department went through to tear down tree stands and homemade blinds and professional ladder stands and anything that we could find on township property. I did a brief walk of Wise Woods the other day. In the morning, 9 men were out there bow hunting on township property. And they're not friendly. They're not eager to move or go elsewhere. So part of this property strategy is also going to be moving up to something more permanent in the sign category that tells people where they are and what they're doing. Last year, like I said, we had Mark Schroeder, Jake Rue go around and GPS coordinate every hunting blind, put a notice on there, this is an illegal hunting blind, remove it from the township property, and then turn it over to the DNR to follow up on. It makes it hard, but the DNR is willing to participate and do enforcement for us. But it's a topic we need to address as soon as possible. We're into the bow season already, and I've noticed probably 12 signs were removed in the last week from Wise Woods alone. They're just stopping and tearing them down. Moving on with most of these things, I guess number 11, George, you brought forward was the long-term bond repayment strategy. I don't know how to move that into a brief discussion. I know it's something that we need to start to look at. Well,
the reason I brought it forward is in having discussions, I think specifically centered around work we did with the fire station and how we were going to fund it. Molly was spot on to point out just some of these long-term expenses that we need to make sure we keep in front of us. And I think the largest expense, and I don't want to steal any of Molly's thunder here, but is the bond repayment. And while we've refinanced that and positioned it to be to save hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest, there is a point in time when we've got to have some. We have to have a lot of cash reserves, more than what we have today, for that repayment. And somehow it's keeping it in front of us. So, and whether it's in annual review or a semi-annual review that really takes us out, and Molly, I'll defer to you a time frame, but whether that's a 10-year look or a 12-year look that just says, here's what we've got today, here's what we've planned for, and these are when these expenses, these large expenses are going to be hitting us. Just so as we're thinking about large investments, we're not losing sight of these requirements.
Well, I have all of the debt schedules, and there's nothing out there that we can call early until 2025. They've all been refinanced between 2016 and 2019, which saved closer to $12 million over the life of the loans between the sewer fund, the capital improvements, and the DDA. So there's, other than following the debt schedules at this point, there's really not anything we can do. Even the negative arbitrage on the few that we've got out there that we refinanced in 2016, and they're paying an interest. They got a coupon of 4.5%. They're not callable until 2025. So if we were to do anything now, even though we might be able to get, you know, a 1.5% up to a 2.5% coupon on them, then the amount of money we lose selling the new bonds doesn't make it worth it. So I've looked into that recently. And other than that, you know, the big roll of the dice is whether or not the DDA actually starts to make any reasonable kind of tax revenue, because the projections right now, based on the audit report, are that the DDA is not going to be able to start paying the township back anything until after their last debt payment goes out in 2034. And at this point, if they're you know, projecting to increase their debt to the township by $4.5 million next year, it's going to be a long time coming before it gets paid back. So the township's going to have to keep funding that. DDA is not going to be much help. What I'm saying.
And I think that's kind of my interest in having this as a topic, is saying as we get more experience with what the DDA can and can't do, or the more we go forward in time, the more accurate these projections are going to be able to be. And should we be taking actions today that are different than what we presently have planned, to plan for more of a worst case scenario with the DDA?
Well, it's in the audit report at this point in time. The debt outstanding from 2021 forward for the DDA, principal and interest, which is all set now. There's nothing variable in any of it. The principal and interest that the DDA will owe between December 31st of this year and December 31st of 2034 is $64,887 and change.
And the odds,
$64,887,000 and change. And according to the audit report, they've recorded a liability for the township of $19 million, which is the net present value of those payments, discounted at, I think, 4.5%, and brought back to a present value. So even just on the books right now, we've got a $19 million liability.
and what do we have in our debt sinking fund presently? It's roughly 12.
Hang on, I can get that too.
I think it's closer to 9.
debt sinking fund currently has, well, as of September 30th, it had 10 million in it.
Okay, so we've got a fairly significant gap then. I mean, and obviously there are other funds that in a worst case scenario could be used, but I guess my point is that it's a big number that's out there. The DDA is not going to be funding it anytime soon. Over the next 50 years, it is still going to be a significant challenge, and we're going to bear the brunt of that. So how do we start preparing for that, and how do we start banking more money annually into the debt sinking fund than our present rate of $2 million a year? You know, how do we increase that? Or I think it's a discussion for the board on one, whether we think it is an issue and we should take more active decision making towards doing that, or whether we think that it's the $2 million a year we're presently moving with is adequate.
No, I don't think it's adequate at all. And we used to use a term like we're going to hit the wall. Like, what year is it that we're actually going to run out of money? Did I miss you saying what year that is?
I don't have that calculation.
Because at one time it was 2016.
Brian used to do for us, but I can. Okay, so I can tell you right now that the debt sinking fund did give the DDA $1 million in the end of November or the end of September. So it's down to 9 million. If the township funds 2 million a year and the DDA needs 4.5 million a year, you've got.
We got 3 years and we're done.
Yeah.
You got 4 years and then the debt sinking fund is gone.
Right.
So these are some, I mean, it sounds like we've got to, one, figure out how not to continually fund $4 million into the DDA and work with the DDA on that. And at the same time, figure out how to double the amount, or actually come up with a scientific amount that we need to be putting into the debt sinking fund so that we don't hit the wall.
Right.
Well, you can't do much in the way of negotiating with the DDA because the township pledged full faith and credit for the debt. And the DDA's boundaries are whatever property they can sell and whatever tax base they get for their capture. So that's kind of out of the, you need to pay more of your fair share thing. Yes, being able to figure out where the money comes from for us to keep giving them more money until they can start paying us back is a big deal.
Hey, Mark, Stacy, if you're there, can you chime in on this?
I don't think Mark's on, or he is, there he is.
Yep, just unmuting. Yes, I've been listening to this conversation. Thank you. The one factor that we have not included in the discussion is the potential or the sale of property. Obviously, the DDA is still holding significant assets, ballpark $10 to $12 million worth of real estate that still has to be sold. So that would certainly factor into this calculation. We are all aware that the DDA's cash flow requirements to meet the needs of the bond sinking fund are something that the township has to participate in. We've shown the projections that through 2034, I think that, Molly, do you remember what the number is, the number that we're going to borrow from the township through 2034?
I know that the net present value of the additional liability is 19 million, but I don't have the projection numbers for how Plant Moran figured that out.
And I think it's like 34 million in total on an actual cash flow basis. And then we start paying you back. I agree completely with everyone. This is an issue that we have need to address, and it's a cash flow issue. Right now, the DDA has done its best to minimize expenses. You've seen the budget. There just isn't a lot of fat. There isn't any fat in there. We got rid of everything except the costs that we have to have, which are associated with disposing property. That's the number one expense that we face. And that is a significant cost. Everything else, I don't see it being meaningful. You cut it to zero and it's still irrelevant in the big scope of this.
So what if have we done any calculations to if the 5 in Main residential piece is built, what kind of potential revenue that will generate on the ongoing?
Depends on how many units he puts in and what the property value is. Obviously, Barrington's the next one that's coming up. That's non-capturable from the DDA side, but it is capturable for the township. So you will see a significant increase. However, the DDA does not.
How much of Aiken's property is capturable?
I'm sorry?
How much of what's going to become the
Fifth and Main.
Aiken's
Certainly.
development is capturable?
Certainly the portion that he's talking about, the residential, should be the theater area. There's a line that runs from, shall we say, the library roundabout over to Pontiac Trail towards Walmart. So you're going to lose part of that. Everything northeast of that is capturable in general. The other way is only capturable for the township. We did discuss with Oakland County changing those lines to see if we could make this more reasonable. And based on our discussions with Oakland County, they were not interested in trading land to make it simpler. Ultimately, you're going to cut buildings in half, and they're going to figure out which half is in the DDA for capture and which half isn't. But that's an issue we'll deal with as it starts to build out.
So if we do approve the low to medium rise residential part of 5 in Main, what kind of values are we talking about, and what impact would that have, and who would that impact, the DDA or just the township?
The residential portion would definitely impact the DDA. 300 units, 200,000 a piece, something like that. You've got the math for that one. So that's what, 60 million? Somewhere in that neighborhood, cut it in half. So nice, that certainly is a significant portion. But of course, we've also had the loss of a significant component in our tax capture, which was Williams International. Right now, pull this up. 1 second. We are looking at 2021, $1.7 million for projected capture for 2021. You remember that it wasn't that long ago. We were at 2.5 million. The market's tanked. We started building back up. I think we bottomed out at 1.2 million, 1.3 million. We're up to 1.7 million. We need to continue building out the DDA area to get the maximum capture that we can. And that's, at this point, the solution.
But it is from a practical standpoint, Molly and Mark, it seems like we've got at least the semblance of a cash flow schedule, and maybe we need to really kind of take a deeper dive and formalize that, and then understand how do we fund the cash flow so that we don't hit Vanessa's proverbial wall.
And it's also be helpful for when we're deciding on what plans we're going to allow or not allow on the development side of things, changes to a PUD or anything like that. Mm-hmm. How much from a cash flow standpoint and a debt reduction standpoint, if the trade-offs in which is more advantageous, rather than just what looks nice.
Understood.
Or density.
Understood completely. You may also.
I can't believe you just said that.
Yeah, of all the people, I can't believe you
I'm not suggesting increase the density, but I'm saying we need to look at the whole thing. I'm still against increasing the density.
Understood. You'll notice that for 2021, I had no sales proposed. That was a worst case scenario because we just didn't have any insight into what the markets were going to do. So hopefully we are out pitching properties to multiple developers. We'll see where it goes. It has not been as negative as I thought, but it certainly is not as good as it was.
Mark, I think his name is, I'm sorry if I have it incorrect, Tom Tracyak.
Yeah.
I think he presented to the board years ago financial analysis of the DDA. I want to say it was like 2013. So I don't know if he's done anything since, but I think that might be beneficial for us to have a starting point because he did like a worst case scenario and he did different scenarios. Rick, do you remember that?
But that was mostly around refinancing bonds and stuff, whatever. And if I'm hearing Molly say we're kind of at our maximum from that standpoint.
I thought that's when we talked about the wall stuff, but
well, it was
maybe I'm wrong.
No, because we were back then we were all on variable.
Yes. So we didn't know what the future numbers were going to be. But now we have a specific cost associated with the outstanding debt. So I'm certain Molly and I can work that out.
You are correct, Vanessa. That was a discussion previously where there was a worst case scenario, but as Rick said, it was based on variable rate bonds that were varying drastically.
Yeah, and higher interest rate bonds that have now been refunded.
Right.
And refinanced.
But it might be worth looking at, bringing in Plant Moran, not on the audit side, but unless it's a conflict, on the planning side, to see what other options there may be. And it couldn't hurt to talk to Tom Tracyak to see if there's, if he has any suggestions either.
We have used Plant Moran multiple times for financial consulting on this, and could certainly do that again. We'll run the numbers and then lay it out to them and get their opinion also. Certainly wouldn't hurt.
Is that in your budget for 2021?
Will be now.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess the calendar that we're maintaining with the metrics of contracts and everything else, we need to review, make sure it's current, and maybe some way put this bond repayment strategy into the calendar that reminds us annually where we're at, what we're doing, and where we hope to be.
Can we put on the quarterly discussions, at least until we kind of talk it through and come up with some solutions?
Yeah, and I think we're going to see some benefits when you see 2021 coming. The property is no longer conceptual. Mr. Akins owns it. It's a tax generating facility. The Barrington project is moving in a spectacular pace. I think you're going to see tax capture there. So we're going to see some of those numbers grow, as well as, whether phase 2 begins to grow of the care facility just down from us here at the Township Hall, as well as Mr. Akins' residential component of the 5 and Main project. So I think we're going to see some real growth and movement where it's always been dream catchers and concepts previously. Now we actually have owners and investments and interest in these things beyond a conceptual idea. So I think we're going to see some good things coming.
Not that I want to spend too much time on my soapbox here, but remember one of the reasons why we took out the police and fire out of the general fund and had the SADs fully funding police and fire is so that the 1.41 mils, which we've never raised, that money can be used to help pay down the debts, or in this case, save money to pay future payments on the DDA. And as long as our state shared revenue funds maintain status quo, I think there's going to be enough money there. We just have to watch some of our general fund spending. And it's difficult when you look to see, hey, we might have $2 or $3 million when we don't necessarily think about how much we're going to need in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road for the DDA. So maybe we need to have a more long, like the full 25-year strategy on paying down the DDA, not because the problem, the 10-year, 5 and 10 years don't do it for us. So I think at least from that standpoint, and I know you can't really have a 25-year budget, that's kind of unrealistic, but at least from how much money of the state shared revenues and the 1.41 that we can actually save to come up with the 64 million or whatever that number ends up being ultimately.
So at our to Vanessa's point, at our January discussion meeting, can we have, and maybe we chunk it out or somewhere in the middle, and maybe it's a 15-year cash flow look, and make sure then we figure out at least a high level plan of being able to fund that DDA cash flow for at least the next 10 to 15 years, and ensure we feel really comfortable about what's needed for that. And then that just becomes part of our budget process, that is a captured number going into that fund, and that's that's a non-negotiable for paying for other things.
We've also just over the years, we've lost the investment income on the money that we're saving. We're getting, like no money. So that's hurt years, quite a few years back, we're getting a decent amount of rate of return. And so that, when you have saving, $10, $15 million and getting like 0.01% or whatever, some minimal amount, that's not helping the cause either.
Yep.
Okay. I do want to backtrack just on one topic, obviously, because we don't have a full board. We can't do amendments to the agenda. But a topic that really is part of our property strategies. I took it upon myself, because of COVID, it's kind of stopped a few things from occurring at the state level. I did make an inquiry to our Senate and legislature, throwing out my dream wish, if you will, for lame duck activity. We're coming into the period of time where there's going to be a lot of bills and activity in the legislature where people who are term limited, they're leaving office, or trying to finalize deals and finalize things. My first lame duck request to the legislature in Lansing was to facilitate the sale of the Union Lake boat launch to Commerce Township as requested. Hopefully we can get that pocket park and the adjacent parking lot across the street for road expansion. We have no need for that parking lot, nor do we want to have it accessible. But the pocket park is something that we, Commerce Township, will benefit the state of Michigan, maintaining that point of access where people can land their boat, walk up the hill, patronize our businesses, Dairy Queen, Jets, Subway, Dolly's Pizza, or whomever happens to be there over time. And there's no reason for us to pay fair market value for that piece of property, because we're going to be keeping a, if you will, state park open and operating at our expense and time. So I'm hoping that we can get some motivation in the lame duck session to get approval of transferring that property to the Charter Township of Commerce from the Department of Natural Resources. I would tell all of you, if you have a project that you think there is a lame duck inquiry that we can apply to, we should. Road projects are always key, but there's not a lot of road project money. I will share that there are projects, as I've mentioned, discussed this with our planning director, Dave Campbell, trailway and pathway projects, safe pathways to schools, things of that nature are projects that have funding out there, and we should keep our eyes open for the opportunity for being a rider on somebody else's lame duck session inquiry, where they're trying to get trailway path money for Western Oakland County. One of the other lame duck session inquiries that I'll be forwarding to Lansing is our grant request that we did to the federal government. 6 community grant for Scott Air Packs, no relation, but self-contained breathing apparatus and masks for the fire department. Chief Dundas led the way to reach out so that we could partner with Walled Lake, Wixom, a variety of communities, so that one, our equipment is universally adaptable to those people in our mutual aid circles, which makes all of our equipment much more usable and interactive. There's, in using Chief Dundas's analysis, you can kind of watch those SAFER grants and FEMA grants and assist firefighter grants to see how much money they have spent down, to realize we're getting to a window where there might not be money for us in our request. So reaching out to the legislature to say, in a lame duck mentality, if you can help get us our funding for our self-contained breathing apparatus, so it doesn't become an individual expense to Commerce Township alone, is always a benefit. And we have to look at those opportunities to do that. But if you, any of the board members, have an idea of a project that we should be pushing forward to the legislature as we approach the end of term or lame duck session, I'm eager to hear any ideas you have at a later date for that topic, if you will. It may be something that you all have always done. I don't think it's something that we've necessarily participated in as aggressively as we could. I'll move on to item number 12, code enforcement job description. Thank you, Jay James. Jay and I have been compiling a list of appropriate enforcement job descriptions. And I believe for the November meeting, Jay and I can put together an accurate job description, what would be utilized to serve Commerce Township, and thanking our neighbors, Waterford, White Lake, all the way down to Canton, who have given us relevant information that tells us what their jobs do and how they're done. A general summary, just I'll utilize the plagiarism of the Waterford Township, the largest township in the state of Michigan. Under the supervision and development of the services director, perform a variety of tasks associated with enforcing the township's codes and ordinances related to land use, health, and sanitation. Sanitation. Responsible for supervising daily inspection workload of the code enforcement staff. Waterford has two tiers. They've got part-time volunteer enforcement and then the supervisor position. Workload of code enforcement, staff investigating citizen complaints, and the fair and equitable enforcement of zoning, signs, anti-blight, litter ordinances, junk vehicle ordinance, and other health and sanitation and nuisance type codes, processing and issuing court citations, and assisting the township attorney with resolving code violations. They list all of their essential job descriptions. One of the things that many of these communities have shared is the ability to deal with angry people every day. Often when we're telling people, you've got to clean up your property, you can't have that many transmissions on your lawn to be silly. It's a touchy situation. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So if we could, I'll work with Jay. We'll come back with a final, what we believe should be the code enforcement position for Commerce Township, present it to the Board of Trustees for your approval, and hopefully move towards getting someone to do this job that we need to have, with simple but technical responsibilities. Have some investigative knowledge, so you're looking for that retired fire marshal, police officer, or code enforcement officer from another community mentality. Understanding the jurisdiction that you're working in, the ability to handle stressful situations and effectively deal with difficult or angry people on a daily basis. Possess above average communication skills, particularly the ability to speak and write effectively, and understand and carry out to completion complex oral and written instructions. ability to understand and work with maps, site plans, and land parcel information. Basic computer operation, including operating systems and varying software. Skill and knowledge necessary to establish and maintain effective relationship with those contacted in the work organization. How to document evidence, process reports, and testify in court. While performing the duties of the job, the employee is required to perform essential job functions in all weather conditions and varying work surfaces. One of the cities in here has use both fine and gross motor muscles of the total body. Employee is regularly required to lift objects 40 pounds or greater 20 to 40 times per day. When you're out doing cleanup, you're out doing monitoring, you're out doing things. It is a physical task. So I think we've got a lot of great information here that we can get the most out of it. Removing, we had an old job description, but it also indicated periodically inspecting soil erosion, land balancing, other activities, which we would push towards the building department and wouldn't be a code enforcement requirement. Some of those things. So hopefully this data will give us the answers that we need to assist the township and the building department to accomplish this task. I know Jay's willing to assist in, if you will, train, supervise, and monitor someone. We do have several police officers that are retired that have made casual inquiry into the opportunity for the position. And all of them that I've had contact with have those people skills that we're looking for, or I hope we're looking for, to fill the spot. I guess if there's any concerns or anything above and beyond the detail of the job description, please reach out to me, let me know. So if there's something we want to make sure is touched and included, I'll get it in there. But I think these job descriptions are pretty detailed. I was impressed. And again, thanks to Jay James for getting a lot of the detail for us. When it comes to our director level employee evaluations, I'm going to push that closer to the budget. So I'll jump ahead and do the employee handbook. Janet Bushy, feel free to come out of the darkness there. I know you've been dutifully listening all along. Can't thank Janet enough for the work that she's done putting into the handbook. This is something that Janet did. I've given her permissions and encouragement to drive forward. She's interacted with our labor attorney to fine tune and make sure this is current state, federal rules, regulations, everything that there is. I thank those of you who took the time to actually read it, go through it, and forward comments to Janet regarding this. It's greatly appreciated. And I guess I'll open it up. Is there any specific comments or concerns from the board as you've read through this?
Can you go through, Janet, the suggested changes and give your comments on those?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I left that sheet of paper at home. At work. Let me see. Maybe I didn't.
Janet,
I might be able to.
Okay. I can text it to you if you need it.
I'm going to say that I was going to do the same
please?
thing.
Yep, give me 1 second.
Or I can read them to you as I got.
Yeah, I was going to say we can go down the list with Janet to help her. The first one is conflicts of interest. Two period. Should there be a dollar amount such as $50 or less, and regarding entertainment, how many and how many times a quarter? So essentially, the business world is you can accept gifts or gratuities that they're reasonable, they're not overactive, and you can consume them in a sitting. So maybe you're out to lunch, or the building department, someone brings candy corn or something, the silly cookies at Christmas, sort of a thing. But I think what we're getting at is we probably want to be able to say we don't want somebody every week getting tickets to the Red Wings dropped off at their desk for thanks for services rendered.
So and some of this too, Dave, was just trying to give the employee a number, rather than trying to or worrying about what's the definition of a substantial gift. Just put a number, something that's a value of X is not appropriate and you shouldn't accept it. So it just gives them a level of understanding and not having to guess.
And I'll throw it out there just for discussion's sake. When I was at county, it was 0. And when I worked for AAA as a fraud investigator or GMAC, it was consumable or less than $25 was acceptable in a quarterly scenario. Obviously, in that profession, I interacted with professional expert witnesses, people that we would hire to do forensic evaluations of automobiles, fire investigation scenes, things of that nature. Often we would meet before court and do things. It was not uncommon for them to say, hey, we'll have our court prep and we'll buy you your lunch. So you get an $8 sandwich down in Greektown before you go to federal court or do something like that. But I think the reasonable and customary is probably $25 or consumable.
Then you also could make it so it has a disclosure, meaning if you receive the gift, you have to report it to somebody.
HR is typically that place. I know in my prior careers, it had to be listed on your expense report that you received it. If you didn't, you would be called in to find out why.
So I would recommend it goes to their manager, their supervisor, rather than inundating Janet with anything through the township, whether it's a firefighter, whether it's a library. I think the manager or the supervisor is, that's part of their responsibilities is enforcing the policies.
What if it is a supervisor, George? I don't mean thus. It is a department head.
A department head would then go to I believe, then the township supervisor.
Yeah. And I think that's reasonable.
Yep. But
so is it consumable or less than $25? Is that how you want it in there?
I would say consumable or less than $25 with notification to the supervisor that something had been dropped off, gifted, or done. I don't want to stop a friend of the library from coming in and leaving cookies in the employee lounge. I don't want to stop, Marv's Deli from making a batch of cookies and coming into the building department and dropping it off on the counter when they're doing something. Silly little things that we see on a regular basis. But I also don't want to see a situation where, as I have seen, where someone comes in with, like 12 trays of baklava, and it's like the $50 gift box, and they're like, oh, here, spread them around the township hall. And you're like, no, thank you. We really appreciate it. We can leave one and leave it out for all the employees everywhere. And it sits around for a week until someone throws it all away. But I think it would be appropriate, unless someone's different, not to exceed $25. Consumable or not to exceed $25.
I think I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So what's the next one you got, Janet?
The next one, employment. It's indicating regular full-time, change minimum of 30 hours weekly to 37.5 hours. Good catch, George. I know you did this one. There was the conversation of why the 30 hours was in there. The Affordable Care Act identified that 29 to 30 hour. It just didn't carry over to pushing our full-time to 37.5. So that's a pretty simple one. The third one is work week and hours of work. Insert after the Richardson Center as Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So that we are depicting for the benefit of the employee their work site, what the hours are there. I guess, do we have to then identify what the
library.
hours are at the
Library.
library? Because that's a 7-day operation.
Probably.
So I would think we should also list the hours of the library.
But someone doesn't work for the 7 days, so you gotta be a little bit careful on that one. They have varying
Right.
schedules.
They do. But it's,
But are they all
Richardson
five?
Center is Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The library would be, library is open. Employees aren't going to work more than.
Like operating hours, not
Yeah.
necessarily the employees' hours.
But this is employee handbook, so
But those are the hours that they should be working within.
So maybe
Right.
Jan, it's something that while the library is open 7 days a week, the employees will work no more than 40 hours during that time frame. So just a recognition, you might be asked to work on a Saturday or a Sunday, but you'll never work more than 40 hours in that time.
Is it 40 or is
Do
it
we wanna
37 and a
say
half?
never?
37 and a half.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is deductions from employees. Add court-ordered deductions. I discussed this with Janet, and some of our, whether it's a court-ordered garnishee wages, friend of the court, things of that nature, that's a protected topic in a personnel file. And we couldn't say no to a court order deduction if we wanted to. I don't know that we need to list it.
Dave, my only point, I didn't know the answer to that. It was
That's fine.
More of a question of if it's not there, does somebody have an argument against us that says you said you can't, you said you can only deduct for these things. If it's a moot point, then no issue.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's worthy of educating all of us on these topics. The next subject is dress and grooming.
Hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
On the deductions, what if it's something like HR will notify the employee if a deduction is going to be taken from their paycheck or something like that, because they don't always know, that the amount or when it's going to be. So at least maybe we just make mention that we will let them know so they don't have the surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess therein again, in a court ordered, whether it's garnishee wages, friend of the court, alimony, I don't know what other award could be taken from an employee's wages, but those three are by court order, and we would be served notice with the expectation to withdraw it, and then the employee would be notified of that.
When we did have this happen, I did notify the employees, so.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess deduction, maybe there is merit then in indicating deductions from employees will be advised.
Because we're having a situation where someone had identity theft. Someone stole their identity, put in a claim for unemployment using a different address. So our employee was never notified until we got notice that, guess what? We have to now start withholding money to send back to unemployment.
Okay. All right. The next topic was dress and grooming. Instead of casual, change to business casual. That's.
So this doesn't apply to everybody. We've been through this before. So for example, like in maintenance, they don't wear business casual.
Right.
Well, that's why it says use common sense too.
Right.
Should we put or otherwise defined or something to where this is the general? There's a few positions that don't require this.
Fire department, building.
Yeah.
Well, we have a building department.
Building. This isn't building. This doesn't go. We don't we contract.
This wouldn't apply to the building department. It would apply to a potential code enforcement officer, planning, office staff, library.
I think maintenance is really the only one you're talking about,
Maintenance
Rick,
is the
right?
only one, yeah.
But I think there is a definitive language in telling individuals, and I will give kudos to Molly, Missy, and Jay for in-house where we have hired new people. They have come in. Thursday is a casual day in the township offices, and we've had some people show up, and I know that the people I named, they have not been shy about saying, next Thursday, don't wear this. It's okay to stay and finish out your shift, and we understand, and you're new and you didn't know, but they do a good job of making sure that that information gets shared. But there's nothing wrong with being definitive and saying business casual. Because I get laughed at on a regular basis where I show up in a suit and tie and they're on blue jeans and football wear. but my schedule doesn't allow me to participate, if you will. The next item on the list is disciplinary procedure, step number 2, parent C, add time frame. The problem must be corrected by, i.e. within 60 days. I guess my concern is, do I want to wait that long to monitor someone? Or, maybe, a situation where, let's say election season, the clerk may not have this occasion occur again for a year, and is 60 days prudent or reasonable, as opposed to a situation where, maybe Chief Dundas has someone who is making inquiry for a copy of a fire report, and a firefighter says, nope, we don't give those out, you can't have it. And the chief has to step in and say, oh, no, wait, there's a way to get a report. This is the process of doing it. Don't tell people they can't get a copy of the report. So I don't know that we have to put a within 60 days. I would say that some of these, if you can't get trained to remediate the problem immediate or within a week, that might be a step for additional education training or more severe discipline.
Well, you might have a 60-day review period where after 60 days, you can go back and say, you've done a great job, or this is still happening. Not acceptable. And then it's a way to document it.
Okay. I guess I'd be more inclined to do a 30-day versus 60, but I'd also have to yield to the ASME and IFFA contracts to see what. Janet, do you think we need to call the labor attorney to say if is there a reasonable and customary period that they would suggest to give us a time frame?
I think they would leave it up to us.
Yeah. Okay.
What about a no longer than 60 days? So that way it gives the manager, the supervisor, the flexibility to move it quicker depending on what the issue is.
Much better language, I think. That's well said. And then the last topic on this list is paid time off, PTO. On the second paragraph, add the word year after first blank of employment. Also add the policy in the section which states how much time each employee gets based on years of service. That's pretty typical. Everywhere I've ever worked, they've got a chart that tells me how much I get the first year and how much I get the 25th year. So, and I know Janet has been working towards improving our PTO category and records, if you will.
So Dave, I've got, and for the rest of the board, I do have a another item to add under the PTO, and maybe it's not an ad, but it is the
expansion.
Well, it is the method with which we're calculating PTO right now. So PTO is obviously based upon years in service. but the schedule that's not included in here, which is part of the and Janet, jump in here anywhere if I missed, but Janet has a policy letter that expels out PTO. So my first thought is that that language should be included in the employee handbook, just because it is something that is very important to every new employee, is really understanding what is the PTO policy. And by having it in the handbook, then it's readily visible and available, and really nobody can say, I didn't get this letter, etc. But the more important piece is the way we're calculating it. And Janet was able to help me understand that it really goes back to the historical AFSCME contracts, where, and I think that we've adopted that for all employees, but what it does is it sets two different standards on whether you're working in Township Hall for 4 days, or you're working in one of the other jobs that's a 5 day a week facility, even though we're all working, or all the employees are working 37 and a half hours. So again, in discussing it with Janet, I think rather than using the schedule where we just limit it to a 4 day a week person or a 5 day a week person, PTO hours should be based upon the 37 and a half hours that you work, not days. Because what's happening is people in the library are actually earning less PTO time versus people in Township Hall. If you just take the math, because we're calculating it based upon days worked versus hours worked. So it's not going to be any takeaway from the AFSCME contract or the people that are working in Township Hall. It's fundamentally going to be having a more equitable and increasing the PTO hours earned for the people in the library or Richardson or the fire chief and fire inspector. So Jenna, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but it doesn't affect them on as they're using it, but if they're banking it, they're actually earning less PTO hours if you work 5 days a week.
Correct.
Without getting into the logistics, how is working more days giving you less PTO if it's based on the days worked? Seems a little confusing. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, you're getting the same amount of days. It's just the hours are calculated different.
See, if you were to if it was a PTO day and you had to take it as a solid day, there really wouldn't be an issue. But PTO is taken in increments of single hours. So you might want to only 2 hours, and therefore you have earned less hours working 5 days a week versus working 4 days a week with the way the schedule is written today. So my proposal is just to have a very simple, you earn, and I think Janet's already done the math here, but you earn point X number of PTO hours per hour worked. So as long as you're working 30 and a half hours, doesn't matter if you're earning that 37 and a half hours, working 4 days or 5 days, everybody gets the same amount of PTO hours.
How does it affect the union contract?
Well, it shouldn't, because it's not changing the PTO they earned. So in effect, we wouldn't have to change. We could keep the union contract with the same language and it would have no effect. But for the non-union employees, it would bring them up to par with not just the union, but anybody working in Township Hall.
But wouldn't PTO time, or maybe shouldn't PTO time be accrued per pay period, not per hour worked? So that when you complete your pay week, you then can say, I have earned 0.8 hours of PTO time, where in the calendar year, you have captured, I'll just make it 12 days, whatever that is, or 12 8-hour days where, you know, when a person takes a day off in the township hall, they're taking off a 10-hour block of time versus a firefighter has to take off 24 hours of time to get a day. So shouldn't it be calculated by pay period as opposed to per day or per month? So you're not giving someone they haven't fully earned yet.
What if they take a partial day, Dave?
Well, I would say a partial day would be subject to approval of the department head, because I'll use Molly or Missy, you know, in tax season or election season, we have, and I'll call them unofficial blackout days. You can't take this day off.
Well, like for if you go to the doctor, I mean, I'm sick, so I'm going to the doctor, I'll be in, or going to the dentist, I'll be in at 9 o'clock instead of, you know, 7:15 or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
you're gonna have some of that, or I'm not feeling good, so I'm gonna go home early. Whether it's planned or unplanned, you're just not gonna have everything be full days, no matter what your number of days are or hours in the day.
I don't disagree, but I will tell you those situations are so few and far between. At least I'm using my 4 years of experience. They are so few and far between that normally, I'll say my judgment, I'm able to step forward and say, hey, look, I'll use an example. Cheryl Smith, her windshield wipers broke in a storm on her way to work. She got to work and she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, just go take your car to get it repaired. Get out of here, go. And gracefully gave her that ability, as opposed to we've had other employees who have said, I want to take 3 hours every Friday, or I mean, every Thursday, so I can get out of here early. I just honestly think it's been such a very limited number of times that I think just allowing each department manager to manage those, you know, yes, you can take a couple hours off, it's great. But in your pay period, you're going to earn 0.8 hours. And then it's the manager or the department head's going to be able to say, this is kind of getting out of control. And I can't have no one at the counter because you want to leave at noon every Thursday.
Well, that's where it in the policy, it states that the manager or their direct line supervisor must approve it. And I'm going to get to, I have one question on that, but before we get off of this, Janet, you know what we're trying to accomplish here. Do you have, what do you think is going to be the easiest way to implement this, while at the same time being the simplest?
I'm going to have to sit down and
Can I make a comment while she's thinking about that response?
Yes.
See, my understanding is that we aren't on a accrue as you go PTO policy. We're on January 1st, everybody gets their bank added. And if you leave February 28th, you get your PTO bank paid out. You don't start the year with a carry forward, and by the end of January, you've earned a day and a half, and by the end of February, you've earned another 2.5 days. So in March, you can take 3 days off.
You have to work the year before.
That's not how it is done. I mean, you work the previous year, and then you're given the vacation that you earned that previous year on January 1st. And if you leave on January 2nd, that's yours. So doing the accrual thing, I mean, yeah, if you want to change the entire way the contracts are written, you can do that. And Paychex knows how to do it, because I've done it before with Paychex, but that's not how our stuff is written.
So if that's
I guess I'm looking more for the first year employee. When they come in and they get their booklet from us, they know in advance what they're going to get.
And I think that's language is probably already in the policy that Janet has on how, I mean, obviously you've got your initial, subject to not being hired period, whatever that's 60 or 90 days. But as we go, and I guess my point is, after that point in time, once we have somebody that's been there at least a year, so the 1 to 2 years of service, right now you should be getting whether it's, you should be earning that based upon whether it's the weekly, it somehow based on 37 and a half hours for the week or for the pay period. Either one of those gets to the same figure of equity between 4-day a week and 5-day a week. That's all I'm trying to solve here.
Okay.
What if I try to figure something out and bring it back?
Yeah, I think as long as we get something to implement prior to January 1st,
Okay.
then.
Yep. Okay, we'll make a couple phone calls and see if there is a best practices language that we can implement and bring it back for the November meeting for approval.
So
And I can help Janet if you want me to.
Okay.
And just two other items in this area that I noticed on the policy. So the first was the definition of notice for scheduled time off is a half-day notice. And to me, that while it's still, I understand management approval, but that would be somebody could come to Missy the day before the election by noon and say, I want to take tomorrow off. And scheduled, or that is categorized as scheduled time off. To me, a half-day notice is unreasonable for somebody to take a scheduled PTO day. And then second to that, and I know this is an issue that that I know that I missed in some of the other contracts, whereas there can be not even a discussion with the employee on taking too much unscheduled time off until their 6th occurrence. So that the supervisor or the manager cannot even speak to the employee until they've done this 6 times.
Yeah, but the supervisor or the manager always has the opportunity to say, no, you can't take that off tomorrow.
So that's scheduled time. If somebody just says, doesn't show up for work, the supervisor can't mention anything to them because they just say, I took an unscheduled time off, unscheduled PTO day. And that
so George, the union even gave us a hard time with the 6. They thought that was too small back when we implemented that into the union contract. I mean, we barely got that, just a little history there. That's how it got there. I think it was, we went with less, they went with 9, and we came to 6 as like an agreement.
So I honestly believe, George, you are absolutely correct. I've had this conversation with Chief Dundas. You know, I mean, in a 24-hour work schedule, a person could go almost 9 months and you could never question, why are you always taking off Wednesday? You know, mentality. So I do believe that this is something that we can reach out to the attorney at the same time and get a best practices. I know when I worked for the County of Oakland, I know when I worked for AAA and for GMAC, I had to give 72 hours notice subject to approval.
That's for a scheduled day.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, even if we address the union at a later point in time, for the non-union employees not showing up to work for a week and the manager not being able to say anything to them about it to me is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're just talking non-union right now, correct?
Right. Yes. Correct.
That's okay.
But I do think a half a day, I don't know, maybe I'm okay with the half a day notice, is because I think the supervisors have the right to say no. If something comes up with somebody's child or a doctor's appointment comes up, I think that they can manage that themselves and say no if it's not fitted.
Agree.
Well, I guess I'm okay with a half a day with the manager approval if the 6 days then becomes 1 day, where if you just don't show up to work, the manager has a right to question you and to potentially put something in your personnel file.
So George, just so you know too, that also counts, like if you call in sick that day, anything before like a half day is part of that 6 days. So you can call in, it's not necessarily just not showing up. Showing up is part of it. That's why it was implemented for people who were not showing up, but it's also because, you know, counts as somebody calling in sick.
No, and somebody has the legitimate, I called in sick. I don't have to. Missy's counting on people for election and it's crunch and somebody just is not going to come in today.
That's why there's the blackout days though, George. That's why they have the blackout days.
I see exactly. I know what you're
just not-
saying, George. I know what you're saying. Just there was a reason behind it. I was just trying to let you know what the FYI behind it was.
And I'm assuming, Missy, that election days are blackout days?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the day before, too.
Months before.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, that's all I had on that section.
Okay, so with just a couple of minor amendments, Janet, we can make a couple of phone calls and come up with best practices answers to a couple of these, and we should be able to have this approved in November and subject for distribution
Okay.
quickly thereafter.
Yep.
And I will say it, I know that others have said it to you, but for the benefit of YouTube and saying it for over and over, absolute rock star, great job. I really appreciate all the effort you put into doing this handbook.
Thank you.
Big deal.
I agree. Good job, Janet. It's a big hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rick and Molly are happy you did it too.
Yeah, because we dropped the ball. I didn't do it, so.
I know.
I think it was like 4 years ago it was signed to you guys.
Hey, I still have the last email I sent to Rick saying, are you available next week, without a response.
What year was that?
Yeah, what year?
It was August of 2015.
Okay, good job. Okay, so moving into item number 13 and 15 combined, if you will. So with the, and I got my stuff around. So doing a performance evaluation with director level people, we created a document that would be a performance review professional development plan. The employee would do an employee set, or has done an employee self-evaluation and development section, performance achievements since last review or over the last 12 months. The next category is your strengths. What is your strength and what's the rationale behind the strength? Areas of improvement and what's the rationale behind the area of improvement? Short-term goals are listed. We give them space to list 3 short-term goals to be completed over a 6 to 12-month period. A long-term goal is career goals to be completed over 12 to 36-month period, so that we can lay a foundation of kind of planning out where they're headed, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. And then it goes into a manager evaluation and feedback. The manager evaluation and feedback should provide direct feedback related to the employee's work performance. Feedback can be a mixture of both positive and constructive feedback. Each section should include at least one item that provides a potential area of improvement. Managers should be as specific as possible when providing feedback. In a scenario, we have 3 categories. So we're doing. We're doing. Missing. Oh, did we lose George?
I don't see him.
I don't see him either. If he comes back in, I'll let him in right away.
Okay. So we have.
Dave?
What's that?
I'm sorry, you're not mentioning names, are you?
No,
okay.
I'm just going over the form that we are utilizing to accomplish these tasks.
Okay.
So the employee productivity and job performance provide feedback related to the individual productivity, timely performance of required tasks, meeting deadlines, demonstrated commitment to work, etc. The next category is a quality of work, provide feedback related to accuracy, attention to detail, customer or manager feedback, etc. Communication and teamwork. We give them, there are 2 points where we can touch on communication and teamwork. Initiative and problem solving. Initiative, problem solving, and innovation. provide feedback related to the ability to work through challenges, solve business or job specific issues, creative approaches to work, etc. And then we have a third section, which is action items based on manager-employee collaboration, to be employed by the employee and manager together during a face-to-face interview based on review of the discussion in sections 1 and 2. So we have the ability to interact on things that we would like them. There's George back. Can you hear us, George?
Yeah, I can. So for some reason, I lost you on my iPad.
No problem. I just am going over the form that we are utilizing to accomplish this task and all of the criteria in it. The last one is action items based on manager and employee collaboration. And we made room for up to 5. The failing in this document, we provided it to the staff, to the directors in a fillable form. They did a phenomenal job. Fill it out. But the problem is the more you write, the smaller the text gets. And literally, we ran into a situation where I typed up a review of several employees. It's friggin' microscopic when I print it out. So I've had to adapt to moving to a Word document and a Word form, answering all of these questions, but I can't do it integrated into the form itself. I believe all of the directors that I've been able to meet with personally find this to be acceptable, find it not to be a problem at all. It's just a little bit, it made it more difficult where I thought I was going to be able to electronically share with you a form and you could read their comments, my comments, and our comments together with action plans and everything. That did not work. So working with Mr. Sabrowski and with Janet, coming up with a way that we can create a form that will accomplish these tasks, it is ebb and flow, if you will. I think it's been okay. I think it captures and will document in personnel files levels of activity, involvement, and some goals, if you will, that we can go back and review. The more difficult side of this is I don't know anybody that wants to be talked about publicly. So I guess my question to mainly the trustees, is it inappropriate in the next week or so for the 4 trustees to have kind of a work study, sit down in the dogwood room, go through these evaluations?
Can't do it.
Not at the same time.
We can only do 3.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah, we can't have a quorum, but if we can do 3 and 3 or something, I certainly wouldn't have to necessarily be involved. You're able to see what my observation and comments are, where you could say, okay, we agree, we disagree, or we want to do something more detailed to get to a final decision. And at the same time, the 3 of you, and keep in mind, I don't know if you're monitoring, there are 15 of us that are here, department heads and trustees, and then we have 2 electeds candidates who are listening in. So it's not like there's a broad spectrum of people that are here in the room with us. But if 3 of you could meet next week, sit down in the dogwood room, go over the questions, go over the forms, and then also go over some of the data for comparables when it comes to wages, what our neighbors are paying, and what we are paying, and find that happy medium so that we could finalize our budget in November. I think it would have merit.
So Dave, did you already do the evaluations for this year?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I missed that.
I have
That
a
was
couple of
happening.
department heads to meet with personally so that they can be involved, but predominantly, yes, we have completed these. We have sent these out to okay, let me put this specifically. Janet Bushy has sent these out to the directors. The directors have sent them back. Almost the majority of them I have met with. There are a few left to do. Hopefully I'll get them done tomorrow morning and tomorrow or the next day, and have these finalized for you to, as a, you know, if, and I don't know, I'm hoping Bob's not COVID positive or anything terrible, but you know, if Rick, Vanessa, and George could sit down as a group, Molly, Missy, and Bob could sit down in a group, and certainly then if any individual, you know, has a question, you could reach out to me or Janet, and I can provide you with comparables on all of our directors that I have compiled to show what we pay, what other areas pay, so that we get the most accurate information. Some of this has been very difficult to gather. And I'll give you an example, and not to pick on one department or the other, but to be descriptive. The planning department, Independence Township has a planner, but he's their code enforcement guy. And when you look into how Independence Township does planning, 90% of their work gets contracted out to a, you know, like a Plant Moran, a McKenna and Associates, a professional agency that does all their site plan work, does all their assessments, and their in-house person really doesn't, quote unquote, do planning. I will tell you, there are some we are a unicorn when it comes to a couple of our departments. No one else has one person doing two jobs. We still have people left over from 2008.
Sorry, Dave, was there goals actually written and achieved? Or is this just an evaluation of their performance?
I think it's an evaluation of their performance and goals that are going to apply to 2021.
Okay, all right. That's where I got confused that, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, did you include the two deputies?
No. Okay. No, the deputies work specifically for those electeds, and we have no say in what they do. They both are stellar people, hardworking people, but
we set the salaries.
As far as, yeah, I'll have comparables for that.
So otherwise you're asking us to set salaries with no information whatsoever.
No, I understand what you're saying. I thought you were saying evaluations of deputies. We can have salary comparisons for that. That's no problem.
I thought the history was that it was up to me and Missy to set our deputy salaries up to 80% of our own.
So that's why I don't know if we're using the percentage. I mean, if we're maxing it a percentage, I guess I'm okay with that. That's why I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, for deputy treasurer, deputy clerk, that would be the analysis that has always been done.
So then if the clerk and treasurer get a raise, then that 80% level comes up too.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they make 80% of our pay. They can't make any more than that.
I understand what I'm saying, but if we set your salary first, then you know what the 80% is. If we do it out the same time, then you're basing it on either the previous year's 80%. I'm not quite sure what you're basing it on.
My treasurer, my deputy's not at 80% of my salary.
Okay.
Currently.
Not close.
So is this, I'm sorry, forgive me, the 80% rule is new to me. Is that a statute? Is that a policy? Where does it?
What we used to do.
Yeah, that falls under the way we've always done the deputy treasurer and deputy clerk, not to exceed 80% of the elected's pay.
Was it 80%
like in the 70s,
like
80s? Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I thought it was in the 70s. So.
Is it? I apologize.
And it was just a flat amount. So I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. Back then, whatever the treasurer and clerk made, the deputy got a certain amount. And it doesn't matter if that person was there for their first day on the job or they've been there for 30 years, they got the same percentage. And then at some point people were saying, wait, that's not fair. So that's why then there was some flexibility given. So it wasn't just an automatic amount.
I get it. I will say some of the positions, places that we have traditionally had the ability to rely on for comparables are SEMCOG or the Michigan Townships Association. Both of those did not do comparisons, I think, in the last 24 months. So it's been very individual and difficult to get some of our comparables. Just
When
those
everyone's
things.
job description is so different in the government sector, especially that it's helpful, but we're not going to base every decision on that.
I understand. I just want you to be completely understanding that.
Yep.
Some
I
of these
appreciate
are
that.
Just
it's a good
not,
guide.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I will say that in our discussions, one of the things that I have kind of thrown out there is, when we want to when we want to retain the quality employees that we have, and one of the questions that comes up is, do you care if a subject matter expert who is a department head, now pick on Chief Jim Dundas, do you care if he makes more than an elected official? I don't. If he's providing a service to us that we need, and maybe that position would put us in a situation. Currently, our fire chief makes less than a firefighter. Right, wrong, or indifferent, and I don't mean to embarrass or pressure Jim, but he's got broad shoulders. He's a tough guy. He can handle it. But I think that's a discussion that we should have. That I personally want the best people serving the Charter Township of Commerce. And as an elected, I know that I could be replaced I will be replaced on November 21st, but the supervisor's position could be replaced by a manager, as Oakland Township has done. And then the supervisor just becomes a figurehead elected, working part-time and chairing the meetings. So I personally would hope that the township is providing the best service providers in our department heads as possible.
So in case I missed it when I lost connection there, you've had year-end reviews with Jim, Allison, Emily, Dave.
A couple I'm going to have finalized tomorrow, but the vast majority, yes. I've had meetings with every one of them after they went through and filled out a performance review that required them to do a self-evaluation and development, listing their strengths and the rationale of how they come up to the strengths. I think that's where we lost you in communication. They had to indicate areas of improvement and the rationale behind what they would do or why they need, or that could be an area of improvement. And then they listed their short-term goals, which would be a 6 to 12 month period, and their long-term goals, which would be a 12 to 36 month period. And then the next phase is where I meet with them and go over my observations and opinion of the work product that they're doing or have done. And with that I finalize it with working with them to come up with action items based on a manager-employee collaboration. So providing as many as 5 potentially action items that they're going to take steps to achieve results in 2021. To give us some starting point for annually to be able to say, hey, we want another pedestrian bridge built. How do we accomplish it, and in what time frame will it be done? Yeah, thank you, Molly. I appreciate that one.
So you've got that stuff that we can all just kind of get our heads around. To me, I think that sounds like it's all on the right path. So,
and I will tell you that as I said, and you might have dropped off in this portion, The form that we created to use, it hit the metrics of the questions we want to ask and get the answers. But we quickly learned that more you type, the smaller the font got. And
Yeah, I was on for that part.
All
so
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Rick and Vanessa and I will get together and find a time we can come in, or it doesn't have to be the three of us. It could be
just 3 at a time.
Us and Molly or Missy or whatever, but only 3 at a time, kind of staring at what you've got.
Okay.
As long as it's not Monday or Tuesday, I'm fine.
and ideally, Molly and Missy can look at the stuff, randomly. I'm just more concerned to getting a period of time where we can get Rick, Vanessa, yourself, eventually Bob in to do an assessment to be able to, and maybe it's 2 by 2, maybe, 2 of you come in together and you can go through these things. If you have any questions, then you can pull me into the room and we don't have a quorum or we're not violating it, Open Meeting Act rules, but we'll provide the employees some confidentiality and privacy in the discussions, if that works.
So are there any numbers attached to these?
Are there what?
Are you recommending any salary numbers in this?
I believe I have a list of recommendations, and then you can compare them to comparables and see if we can come up with and I tried to keep our comparables communities that were the same metrics, population, and we all know that we have comparables that we've tried to use in the past when we're looking at the size of fire department, the size of police services, the population of the community, development. So I try not to. The problematic portion of recommendations is there's a couple of jobs that we have that don't exist anywhere else. So it's kind of the unicorn thing. And I would have to take you to Canton Township to find something similar.
So can you have on that list also the list of, or Janet can give us a list of their 2020 individual salaries so we can do a comparison?
I've got that.
Okay.
I believe I've got it here in front of me. I do. I believe I do. So you can see what their 2020 salary was, what a 3% raise would be, and what a recommendation would be if it's different.
Okay.
And there are some that are different. And there are also going to be some, I believe, that I would ask you for a final budget analysis to be able to say, regardless of union contracts, we should probably consider raising a wage. And I know that officially that means we're opening negotiations and everything, but really it comes down to, if you want to grieve, I'm going to give you more money. If the board supports it, go ahead. Not to be rude.
What are you referring? Are you referring to a specific person, a specific case, across the board?
Well, I guess I'm leaving the director category and going to a position that we're having a hard time. I'll go out. We're having a hard time retaining maintenance staff. We've probably gone through, I'm going to guess, I might be wrong, 7 people that we have interviewed, hired, and they've left us to go to work for the Walled Lake Schools, to go be an electrician, to go be a tradesperson. And
are we doing exit interviews? Is it salary? Yeah. Is that the issue?
It is numbers. The gentleman who left us to go, we offered him a job, we hired him, and within days he left to go to the Walled Lake Schools for 50 cents more. But there's the comparable too. He wasn't having to do plumbing and heating and cooling and painting. He was just kind of mowing, when he went to the schools. So there are job differences. And I think we're looking in the maintenance department, it's different.
So you're saying the schools are overpaying?
I think they're paying an equitable wage. I think we're underpaying.
So I think that's part of the stuff that you've got. If you've got comparable, we need to be competitive.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great term. Thank you, George, because that's the term I was looking for, competitive. I just don't want to, I mean, and I applaud a recent departure, Jake Rue. Jake's a great young guy. I wish him the best in his future endeavors. He wanted to be an electrician. He was able to get sponsored into a system that allows him to go into an apprentice system. I applaud him for it, and I would give him a letter of recommendation in a minute. But we do have quality people. I want to retain those quality people, and with all due respect, I'm going to be 63 this year. Mark, our director, he's not going to want to stick around here forever, and we want to be able to retain someone to replace Mark someday. He can't leave for at least until the cemetery fence is done.
So Dave, I'm not sure what your age has to do with Mark unless you're lobbying for his position after.
My daughter told me I should put in for it. I love this idea, coming to work. And George offered to volunteer me, which I'm going to take him up on, to help be a laborer, to help Mark get cemetery fencing started if we're able to before ground freezes. But so other than moving off of that, thank you for your commitment to come in and see these in-house. The 2021 budget discussion, I think we only had 2 topics that we had not touched base on. And I gotta find where I just lost my place.
Was it debt sinking fund and the
Well, there was 3
one?
Right, there was debt sinking, there was
budget stabilization,
yes,
and employees and the employee salaries were the 3 open items, right?
Right, and Janet, in the most recent email with 12 attachments, she also did highlight those places where we asked her to make a change, and she did the changes. But the main one is debt sinking fund. If you have the ability to bring that up on your screen or phone, iPad, wherever you happen to be at.
Right, so this is the one that had 9 million in it that we just talked about.
Yes, we did discuss this. This obviously is going to be part of a future strategy discussion, but currently it lists ending fund balance in 2021 at $9,124,452. I would be looking just simply for, I know there's a strategy that you as a board are going to carry into the future in a discussion, but for a tentative approval, if you don't find any problem, we can move this to the November for finalization.
At the $2 million number, basically?
Yeah, I believe it's, we essentially putting $2 million in annually. And currently,
and then taking 4.5 out.
Yeah. The first year of taking the 4.5 out, right, Molly?
Yeah,
yes.
It is.
So that's why we're going backwards instead of forward.
Mm-hmm.
One.
Yeah, and we may come up with, as Rick had said, we may come up with an analysis of what our tax capture is going to be, and find some real value in what we're going to be get with Aikens being a property owner now, not a conceptual agreement, with Aikens real estate project coming in with a potential tax capture, and as well as the Barrington project, which is going to, I believe they're seeking occupants to begin in December of this year. So we will see benefits in 2021.
So what's the board's thoughts on increasing the 2 million to even 3 million or even a little more? I mean, we're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing it now?
Well, because you're also going to be funding $2 million towards a fire station.
Yeah.
Next year. I mean, how low do you want your general fund balance to get? We cut $1.5 million worth of checks a month.
Well, we talked about that before. We've never really established what our fund balances should be at. And that's a good discussion to have at some point, but when I went to the general fund down at the end, our fund balance is what, 16 million? If I'm reading that right, and that's after the end of, that's the end budget for 2021.
No, no, that's where it is right now. You still haven't paid any expenses for October, November, or December.
Okay, I'm looking at for 2021, what's budgeted to be the fund balance. But anyways,
Right.
it's just a thought we're gonna have to start making those decisions. So I'm just wondering why we're not at least talking about doing it.
No, and I appreciate what you're saying, Vanessa. I don't disagree at all. Right now, and I just took a minute to get there to page 13 on the general fund. The approved, if we go forward with the 2021 approved budget, it would leave us at $16,806,433. If we know that we have a fire station we're loaning money to, a sheriff's substation project we're going to address, I mean, we certainly could deplete the fund balance by putting a $4 million into the debt sinking as a first step.
We ended in 2019 with 13.6 million. If we were to keep it level, that means we would basically be able to transfer an additional 3 over and still have the same 13 million at the end of 21.
Well said. But I like Vanessa said, I really think we need to take that step forward, and we need to raise it.
Well, I disagree with your calculations.
All right, go ahead.
Well, you're looking at our fund balance ended last year at 13.6 million. And you're looking at taking that 13.6 million and adding what's left, the 15 million in the 2020 column to it to come up with your beginning fund balance for your requested or approved for 2021. But what you're not taking into account is you're looking at 9/30/2020 year-to-date activity. We've got no more revenue coming in except one more state revenue share, and we've got at least 3 months worth of expenses to go out, which if you just heard me say, it's $1.5 million a month. So you're not looking at 15 million that you're carrying forward to next year and then adding another 1.5 to it. You're looking at about 12.8 million. Am I right, Janet?
So then the budget numbers are just off by
3 months worth of activity.
Okay.
Which is, okay, 4.5 million.
Same problem we had when we looked at the fire department.
So can the 21 adjusted or approved, requested, can that be estimated to what you think it will be starting on January 1st as a starting point to make it more realistic for us to do this exercise?
Yeah.
And while she's diligently digging, thank you for the discerning description of what we need to actually see, which will allow us to take whatever size step is necessary. But if it's 1.5 per month, there's $3 million that's going to come off of that.
4.5, right?
4.5, yeah.
Yep.
I'm trying to get this past November 3rd. I really am.
I hear you.
Yeah, so 4.5 takes us down to 12.3. And in my head, I would like to see us have 10 million in the fund balance, which would give us a little bit of room to put money into the debt sinking.
So this gets back to Vanessa's earlier point. We really need to have some kind of a methodology that says, here's how much we should have in the general fund. Here's
one year's expenses or something like that.
We had the
Whatever.
auditors before, they didn't really have a suggestion, if I'm remembering correctly.
No, you did ask the question.
It's all over the board.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had
So
this discussion in the Oakland County Treasurers Association and the BSNA tax user group, with all of the other municipal treasurers within Oakland County. And you've got some that are, I mean, they're huge, but they're so tight on their money that when they hit December 31st and they haven't been able to take any of the tax collections for that December because they're for the next year, they have like less than $100,000 in their general fund account starting January 1st.
Oh my.
And you have other ones like West Bloomfield who are sitting on 36 million in their general fund or something crazy like that. So they probably have 2.5 years worth of expense, and Waterford can't cover payroll for the first 3 weeks of the year.
Right.
So
maybe it
there is
is.
no rule of thumb. It's what we're comfortable with, and then being able to live with it by saying, sorry, you can't let your general fund balance go below X, period. Doesn't matter if you want to finish your substation or whatever.
So Molly, could you, between like just Independence Township and Orion, could we find out based on like what they spent in 2019 or 18, what their balances that they carried forwards, what percentage of the prior year's expenditures from the general fund do they carry, whether it's either above 100%, below 100%, whatever. I'd be curious to see, just to have, that way it doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. I'm not worried about the dollar amount, just the percentage of their budget that they then leave an ending balance to carry forward for next year. I think that could be helpful to us in trying to set some kind of number.
Okay.
No, that makes sense. We are there, and it's not things we should plan on. We are going to see money coming into the township through the CARES Act. I don't know what we have received and what we expect to receive with our straight time reimbursement for police, fire, and senior services. I know the fact
go into general fund money.
No, it is, but I'm just saying that's, you're looking at upwards of $800,000 for the time frame that the county has given us at the end of the CARES Act funding. I think the number that the deputy county executive used was 880,000.
But that doesn't do anything for your general fund. It goes into police and fire. So.
Okay.
I think if we just, to Rick's point and to your point, Molly, if we just have a couple of things other places are doing that we can look at, you're right, up to us to make that policy. And I truly don't think it's going to be rocket science. I think we're going to have to set something we're comfortable with. And it's not to say we can't modify it after 2 years if we see it's either too much or too little.
Right.
Well, one additional thing that I'd like to bring up is that the budget you're looking at, you have the $2 million going into the fire fund, but you don't show it coming out of the general fund.
Right.
So that's additional cash.
That's a little
problem. Could that be added somewhere?
So
we have that?
It's in there.
Oh, it is in there, or it is? I thought you said it wasn't in the general fund.
You have the 2.3.
It's not shown in the general fund budget as coming out as an expense for 2021.
Then what's the transfers out for $2,310,000?
To debt sinking. That's 2 million, and then 100,000 goes to
road improvement.
200,000 goes to building and improvement, 100,000 goes to road fund, and 10,000 to the cemetery.
Can we add that 2 million in here? And even if we have to clean it up by the end of the year, so you're good with the auditors, at least it will help us as a kind of like placeholder.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Does that make sense, Janet? I know you're taking notes, but
yeah, Janet and I had talked about this earlier.
Yep.
And how we're going to get it at the auditors.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you took your RV color tour, so you're fresh and ready to finish out this year.
So I want to say for between Dave, Janet, Molly, anyone else who was involved, you guys did a really good job with the budget. I know Bob's usually really hands-on on the stuff, whatever. So I think it's, it's done. You guys are doing a great job. So thanks.
Janet is, and I know Molly works diligently on this, but I will tell you unequivocally, Janet keeps these records. She formulates these records. We sit down and talk about it and we adjust these records. And then these talks like this finalize it. She's awesome. Without a doubt.
That motion to adjourn?
No, you got one more. Just we did this debt sinking, the stabilization.
Oh, the stabilization fund.
Yep, budget stabilization fund 2021 requested budget. Again, I think this goes to our bigger topic that we're all discussing, but this indicates a 2021 approved budget 1.315.
So Molly, the stabilization budget, what's the history of that? Why do we have a stabilization budget versus carrying it within the general fund?
Or Janet might have that history.
I don't know that history. That's from before I was born.
Hey, wait a second.
Rick?
Go
ahead, Janet.
Oh, you went on mute.
You're muted.
That way we can't tell if she's right or wrong.
Sorry. That basically was just like a rainy day fund. Is how that was always put to me through Sue Gross, and the auditors put it in there. Pardon me?
It's statutory. There's a statute, there's a law on the books that says we can set this money aside to use it for budget stabilization in the future. And then there are calculations, which is why we had to take $50,000 out of it this year because it was overfunded. And then it can sit on your books, and then you can use it for, you can bring it back into the general fund and use it for anything you want, but it keeps it earmarked to show that you're being, quote, fiscally responsible.
Right.
So could we not have used $1 million out of it to fund half of the $2 million for the fire station, and then just taken $1 million out of the general fund, and then had another $1 million from the general fund we could slide over into the debt sinking fund?
I don't know what the rules are.
I thought it could only be used for DDA, or wasn't there a reason like it could only be used for certain things?
Yeah,
it was very specific.
correct. There was a limit, and there was a limit to how much money, and once you took it out, you couldn't put it back in.
Couldn't put it back in.
And there's some formula to how much, like when you to calculate the 55,000 to come out, it's based, I don't remember what the formula is based on our overall budget. What's the formula based on?
The formula is a percentage of your last year's original. It's like 10% of your previous year's original general fund budget, or it's 10% of the average of the last 5 years amended general fund budgets. So we did the calculation at the beginning of this year based on 2019 and before, and figured out that we were, and you have to take the lower of those two. And we figured out that we were overfunded. And the other thing is it can't take its interest income, or we're going to end up overfunded again.
I guess the point I was trying to make, if this is a fund that is just sitting there and it's limited flexibility for us, how do we minimize what's in this fund to have it in a fund that is more accessible and flexible and maybe meets our needs better?
So the other comment I will tell you, not that it necessarily exists today, but the other one of the reasons it was put in there was going back with Act 312, whatever, that when we went going through arbitrators for union negotiations with the fire department, ended up being, is the money the arbitrator would look at the budget, see how much money was available, but money in this account for whatever reason was not allowed to be included in saying, yes, township, you should be able to give them a raise because you have this much money put aside and stuff, whatever. So that was one reason a long time ago. I don't know if that's still exists today or not. But it was sort of like a savings account, a budgeted savings account with very limited accessibility.
and that earns no investment income and is just sitting there.
No, it earns income. It can't be, it earns income. The income goes into the general fund. It can't go into that budget stabilization fund, or we end up over the limit again, which is bad for audit purposes.
But I guess my point is, this just seems like dead money. That limited use for us when we might have better use of these funds.
It's a last resort fund in case you get into big trouble.
So, or
Pay payroll.
so it's or it says that then we should be able to keep less in our general fund because this is our insurance policy for at least $1.3 million of what would be in there if we got into trouble. So
with that,
I'm okay with the budget of 1.3 for the 2021 budget for the.
Thank you. I just want to throw it out there quickly. Obviously, the clerk's office is cranking out activity. Please, if you have the opportunity to stop in, not to invade, not to interrupt. Don't think you're going to talk to Melissa Creech at all. Wave as she runs by. Don't get in her way. But I will also remind for the benefit of the recording. So as we approach November, and we do have the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate listening in, I believe the swearing in of a new supervisor would be on or about the 19th day of November. Yes. I believe that on the 16th day of November, there is a Oakland County Township Supervisors Luncheon where, and again, I will reiterate, this was not offered to me, but I will offer it to them to escort them and buy them lunch so they can meet the 20 other township supervisors and begin their networking capabilities. There will be a period in there after the 3rd of November where we need them to come in, fill out their W-2 and all their paperwork and get their email address set up so they can be prepared to interact either with HR, yourselves, and eventually the community at a whole on the 21st. So I know that people have vacations, they have ideas without ever knowing what obligations are going to fall on their shoulders. But I believe November 16th, November 19th are definitive days, and then wiggling in a day in there to do other things. If they're hoping, my phone number is not going to change. If they need something, they can call me. But between the 4th and the 15th would be a great time to come in, ask questions, sit down, look at things. I'm sure the law firm will provide them a copy of the Charter Act, and I'm happy to provide them with the Michigan Townships Association book of how to be a supervisor. But the things that they need to start looking to do, if you had prepaid vacations or ideas of what you wanted to do, welcome to government. With that, George, I'll entertain your last motion of the night at 10 o'clock.
So I'm sorry, are we all getting sworn in on the 19th? I haven't heard this date yet.
Yes.
Yep.
I think Bob was trying to.
For the township board to be sworn in would be a typical day.
The 19th, is there a time or anything?
Yeah, Bob was trying to set something up, and I think it's at 5 or 5:30. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look.
With Judge Law?
Yes.
Yeah.
And is family allowed, or?
I guess it depends on the COVID restrictions at the time.
Okay.
I would think yes, with social distancing and masks, but keeping an open mind to whatever the governor has. I will share with all of you, and Lieutenant Reyes would share this also. You all know that Jocelyn Benson made a rule. The court overruled her rule that she doesn't make law. Firearms carry is what the state law is. The Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, is appealing that. I don't know where that has fallen by the end of the night tonight. Hopefully we'll have more information tomorrow.
We already have it today.
Oh, it did come through?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll assume that the court did not accept an appeal and held that law is law for the carrying of firearms.
Yeah.
just remembering those of you, and I applaud all of our department heads. When you look at people like Dave Campbell, Ben Sabrowski, Janet Bushy, Jason Mayer, Judy Golden, Jay James, all people who not only do their jobs here, but they are election workers. I call them election specialists. No offense. I know Missy knows there is a specific category of that, but God bless them for the work that they do during the election season, helping Clerk Creech get this. This year, I'm obviously not on the November ballot, so I am at the Whim in Prayer and Mercy to help Missy in anything that I can do to help that occur. But with that being said, you know, plan on moving forward and getting things done, and we'll talk to you later. So at, what are we looking at?
10:05.
10:05, motion to adjourn by Weber, supported by Scott. Roll call vote.
Weber,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Creech, aye. Phillips,
Aye.
Burkheiser, absent. Magner,
Aye.
Sobel.
Aye.
Thank you all. Remember, if you have a question, call us as a township board. We give answers. We don't ask questions. We ask them before the board meeting. You did a wonderful job this evening. Thank you all. Enjoy your trip, George, and hopefully your knee is traveling well.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Rob.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good
All right,
night.
everybody. Have a great night. Thank you again.